Yo, what's up, guys? Zeus here, and I just want to say, before the actual video starts, once again, thank you to Yalda for being able to provide this information for me. Now, all of this info did come from Billy. So if you have a Billy account, you can go check this out for yourself and whatnot. There is going to be a document that is going to be like linked in the description where if you want to read along. I was originally going to edit and like put the document in parts and whatnot, but I realized to myself I'm going to like lose my mind having to edit that. So I just decided I'm going to copy and paste the document, edit, make it more finite, blah, blah, blah. So that way then you guys just have access to it and can read along with me right there if you so choose. So yeah, that is practically it from there. Once again, thank you out to Yalda, and I hope you enjoy the movie, because this was a long one to edit, record, etc. And enjoy the gameplay. It's really crappy gameplay of me getting completely destroyed for a bit and also winning. But yeah, that being said, we'll just hop right into the actual video. What's up, guys? Zeus here, back with another video, and I'm going to be breaking down the latest CN rank tier list. I posted on my Twitter for a tier list that was made by multiple top CN rank players, most of them also just being the competitive players themselves, because obviously they're going to be up there. And it received a lot of controversy. There was a lot of opinions about the legitimacy of the tier list. So, due to popular demand, I'm going to be breaking down everything to the best of my ability. But I am not alone. I am actually joined with the man that was able to provide me the information and give me a good breakdown of the tier list and how it's supposed to work. That being Yalda Both, if you want to say anything to the viewers.
Hello, everyone. This is Yalda Both. Yes, I am the one who basically obtained this tier list from CN. And this is one that is put together by multiple top players, as Zeus has mentioned. So please, enjoy the video, I suppose.
Sorry, my mother called me. I'll edit that one out. But, yeah. Well, good to have you here. And, I guess with that being stated, we're gonna just hop into the breakdown of the tiers and the methodology of, which is pretty much just the thought process of, how these players were thinking when they were making these tier lists. So I'll take over, I guess, the methodology, and then Yalda, you can read over just the definitions of the tiers, so that way then people.
Oh yes, definitely.
So practically, taking from the doc, I'm just gonna put it now on screen, the parts of the methodology. Tier 7 and above, please do not try to argue using stats from official tournaments or gameplays played between plural players. This tier list references multiple statistics and not just knowledge points. So practically, don't try to be a smartass just because X character has more points than the other on average. Let's get above that. So the rank environment of season 34 was primarily hunter-sided, but relatively easy for both sides to go for draws. However, it is more difficult for survivors to strive for wins compared to the hunter, and the character strength can considerably influence the outcome of each game, whether for survivors or the hunter. If your character strength is overall lower than that of the opposing side, then you will struggle to pull off wins. So if you're not playing meta, you're gonna struggle. That's practically what that instates. You know, it's a relatively good environment, I guess, to go for draws if both sides are playing the hard meta characters. Other than that, if you're not, then that's what tips the scale. After Goatman entered rank, the character almost always occupies the ban spot. Yep, permabanned every time in my match, leaving room for many more high practice cost performance ratio hunters to shine. Nevertheless, the number of powerful characters on the survivor side has also seen an increase, and the nerfs on previously meta characters have not been prominent. For B+ tier hunters and below, you will experience notable difficulty when playing them, even if you play them near perfectly. That makes sense. For most hunters, it will be relatively uncommon for you to experience 3+ cipher kites during first chase. 2 relatively fast downs can usually ensure a 3k. Common reasons for draws or losses typically stem from coordinated survivor support, successful rebound kites, or not getting anything 60 seconds into the game. So pretty standard stuff, just, you know, you get kited for too long, you'll end up probably not winning the match, but it's also not hard to get a fast down with the abundance of strong hunters that there are available.
Okay, and now I will be defining each tier. There will be a total of 7 tiers in this tier list, starting with S+. The S+ hunter, or perhaps hunters, we don't know yet. The definition of game-breaking hunters and perhaps an extremely powerful existence as well. Unless the player who is playing the hunter is not particularly good at the character, as in very unfamiliar, losing with the character is nearly impossible. And then we have the S tier. S tier hunters are very meta, and it is very easy for you to play them and then guarantee draws or even push for wins. They are major beneficiaries of the overall game environment and the recent game balance adjustments. And then we have the Ace plus tier hunters. They are meta hunters with strengths that can pretty much entirely compensate for their weaknesses. With a good amount of familiarity with the character, you can easily guarantee draws with them or even push for wins, and it will not be particularly difficult. Then we have the A- tier characters. They are somewhat powerful, and they have weaknesses that really cannot be overlooked at this point, and they will be less consistent than many other A+ tier hunters. And then we have the B+ hunters. They are decent to mediocre hunters in the meta, and they have pretty obvious flaws. Many of them can struggle to get draws or even wins, even if you play them near perfectly, as is previously stated. And then, last but not least, we have B-. They are weak hunters in the meta that have very significant straws and strengths that are simply not, good enough for them to shine. If you want to draw or win with those characters, then you need to rely on not only your own skill, but for the opposing survivor team to not play particularly well, for them to make major mistakes for you to win. And then finally, we have C-tier hunters. They are borderline trash hunters that have, very, very particular niches that do not render them practical enough. If you want to play them, then chances are you're not gonna be particularly successful at ranking up very fast.
All right. So as we can see, standard breakdown of tiers. Now that we have that all the way, I think we're gonna jump around a little bit. We're not gonna copy and paste and just practically recite you the document, because then what's the point of the video, you know? We're going to start with the hot spots and then ease in to more of the more general hunters that okay, well, that makes sense, but, why is this one? So I think above all else, we're going to start with the only hunter as of now that's an S+ tier, being Goatman, because Goatman is a very polarizing hunter. There are either people like me who thinks he's the most brain-dead thing to ever come out of the game's existence, and then you have other people who think he sucks and that he takes 200% brain power to use effectively only to get a draw. So Yalda, if you want to take over Goatman, by all means.
Okay, Goatman is, without question, the actual god hunter of the meta. If you see any tier list being made in this season, and the devs do not give any further balance changes to Goatman in the middle of this season, then any tier list that does not put Goatman a tier above every other hunter in the game is not valid. I'm just going to put that out there. Goatman's persona and trait combination have many viable choices, from teleport to excitement to abnormal, and usually the common build that you are going to see with Goatman players is confined space and detention. The hunter is very pursuit and map control focused, and particularly his pursuit is stronger than pretty much every other hunter in the game at the moment. By placing a cage and then instantly teleporting onto the face of the survivor, there is simply no counterplay to that. At closer distances, double cage basically shuts down any possibility of counterplay. There is just no counterplay to this character when played well. Furthermore, this character, the best I can make between Goatman and another hunter would be Bloody Queen. In terms of skill and basically all-roundedness, Goatman beats Bloody Queen in every other way. We're going to talk about Bloody Queen later as well, but I suppose people will sometimes think, hey, it's not guaranteed that you can get a hit just by placing a cage, because as a survivor you can go through the cage and miss around going back and forth and whatnot, but that's not really a valid complaint, because that is like the 2018 argument of even if you walk close to the survivor, you're not guaranteed to hit them because you might get juked. It's mostly just your own problem. And considering that Goatman has a much more going through the cage cooldown than the survivors, you're definitely in an advantageous position. In addition, chair guarding with Goatman, chair guarding isn't really Goatman's biggest strength. However, if the rescuer isn't careful and goes through a cage and then Goatman breaks the cage, then easily it's an over half. And that basically secures Goatman's win one way or the other. If Goatman successfully interrupts, then it's basically GG's. In addition, above all of that, his map pressure is absolutely insane. The stepping back and then 2 cages in a row can catch up a ton of distance in a very short amount of time because it's about 60 meters, right? Because the radius of a cage is at largest 15 meters. So 2 diameters, that would be 15 times 4, 60 meters. That is nearly the distance from a gate to another in certain maps. The cages can even be used to chair someone to a basement or to bring them forcibly close to a cipher with progress, and that can truly mess up survivors late game. Even above all of that, during detention phase, he can easily insta kill survivors using 2 cages. After tier 2, you're basically not going to see him running out of energy at all. Those are the reasons why he is S+. I believe I have said enough.
Yeah, I don't think there's much left to be said. It's what I said when I tweeted about him a while back, how I said that he's the most brainless character that NetEase has ever created on the hunter side, because there's truly no counterplay when you have to face a good Goatman. When you face a good Goatman and you see him just spawn on you, there's nothing you can do. It's practically your best kite will probably maybe be a 30-second kite. And that's generous if you're in an area that has windows and pallets for you to abuse. If you're caught in the open, if you're playing against a Goatman in Moonlit, I pray for your soul. Genuinely, I pray for you. Because you have nothing to work with, and he's just going to down you. And he'll just trap you. The cage spam at full presence, his anti-camp, if he knows where you're coming from, if that boy has wanted order GG's, you're not getting that rescue. You're just not. You're not reaching the chair at all. It's
one thing that I almost forgot. Oh, sorry.
No,
One thing that I almost forgot to mention is that the cage mechanic completely shuts down any form of harassment. That, in addition to all of the insane pursuit and map pressure abilities.
Yup. If he doesn't want to be harassed, just drop a cage on the survivor that's gonna try and harass, or on yourself, or just near a chair. Cage yourself into the nearest chair while you have a survivor down, and now the no harasser can do anything to you because you can't break the cage from the outside. You can only break the cage from the inside. It's really dumb what Goatman can do. It's really stupid. I genuinely don't know what they were thinking when they made him.
Yeah, as far as we're concerned and the Chinese pros are concerned, this character is probably the only hunter who simply does not have any weaknesses.
There's just no downside. The downside is being a bad player. I'm sorry. That's the downside to Goatman, just not being good at him. It is a true, genuine skill issue. And I think we've said enough about Goatman, so our next hotspot is actually going to be Mr. Feaster himself, and I think Al will take over that one. Because Feaster, people were like, whoa, Feaster above BQ? Above Nightwatch? It's Dream Witch? So we're going to hop right over. So Feaster is a pursuit and chair guarding kind of hunter, and his recommended persona trait combos, Peeper, Patroller, Blink, the usual. We've seen it all. Those are practically the standards. He doesn't run anything that isn't practically trump card detention. But the thing with Feaster is that Feaster is very good at information gathering with his tentacles, because his tentacles always will point him in the nearest direction of any survivor that is on the map. And if I remember correctly, it does discriminate between down survivors and healthy survivors, unlike Photo's card trick. So he will always be able to find a healthy survivor or an injured survivor, regardless of whether there's a down survivor in the area. Not to mention him being able to put down tentacles at certain areas just to block off kiting around. So let's say you're kiting on hospital, and then he just puts a tentacle at birdcage pallet. You can't go to birdcage now, because you go to birdcage, you're practically guaranteed to get a tentacle unless you're close enough to maybe juke it or dismantle it while he gets close, and then after that continue transitioning. But even then, that's giving him distance. So him being able to just pick and choose and force you to kite where he wants you to go makes him very good at chasing. Then we get to his camping. His camping, especially when he gets full presence, is some of the most cancerous shit in the game, because it's just tentacle on tentacle on tentacle on tentacle on tentacle on tentacle on tentacle, and there's no cooldown in between using these tentacles if he just spawns them endlessly. Added on to the fact that they spawn in after every survivor that takes a hit. Around every survivor that takes a hit at that. So he hits you with a tentacle, another tentacle will spawn. You get the rescue, another tentacle is there to hit you. He curses you. Then, when that survivor goes down, assuming that survivor had tied, a tentacle will spawn right on top of you. Then, with the curse, he can down you from halfway across the map with said tentacle. So he's always able to, he has a good shot of getting a double down situation with little effort, which makes it very hard for survivors to come back. On top of the fact that we can't kite where we want to go. Now, obviously, without fail, he has weaknesses, being one of his major ones being mobility. He walks barefoot, so he doesn't have any means of catching up to survivors who are really good at getting distance, or any survivors that are able to support the kiting survivor. So characters like a forward, a batter, an anti, even a seer, as minuscule as the owl can be sometimes. Prospector. It makes it very hard for him to catch up with survivors when you have characters like that are also simultaneously harassing him, and he just has no defense mechanism against them.
Allow me to add a few things?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the whole thing about Feaster is that, those are his weaknesses, right? Obviously, he does have weaknesses. We all know his weaknesses. One of the major ones being, as is previously mentioned, that he has mobility issues and probably can't kill people fast enough during the tension phase. However, despite those weaknesses, due to his information gathering abilities and potential for snowballing, he's not really going to give survivors any breathing space. So, sometimes, like, in a Feaster match, you're going to feel like, oh, well, hey, the early game has gone pretty well. But, like, somehow, due to some unknown reasons, whether it's because, like, you know, someone took an extra tentacle hit, or Feaster, like, found the right survivor at the right time, everything just starts to go downhill so fast. In addition to that, for, like, more than 10 seasons at this point, the top, like, 10 hunters in CN has been dominated by Feaster players. So if we don't put Feaster at, like, top 10, or like where he is right now in this tier list, then we're kind of delusional.
I just never thought I would really see Feasters. I don't know. Maybe, again, it could just be a skill diff, because I know I've definitely been annoyed by Feasters. There's a funny clip from one of my streams where Toxic and I just get spammed on by a Feaster at full presence camping on a chair, and there's just nothing we can do. It's just like, well, what you gonna do aside from cope, I guess. But I really never expected him to be just up there. But, you know, when you break it down, like, I can see it. I guess it's just a matter of, like, maybe I just gotta face a really cancerous Feaster to really, like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to face this character ever again, you know?
And this really also shows how important information gathering is in rank. I think, like, in terms of rank, Feaster is like the polar opposite of BonBon, because BonBon's also like a pursuit and chair guarding character. We're going to talk about BonBon later, but yeah, just shows how powerful he actually can be in rank, especially in CN.
Yeah, it's just a value of being able to gain information I can see is what CN hunters like a lot, and it makes sense because the more information you have, that just means the more variables you can use for outplay or to predict where survivors are going to go. Which is why then you can also see a lot of times, even in competitive matches, where even if the hunter has a slow start, because of the information they have available to them, they're able to make some kind of comeback, or at least get out of the position that they were in and make it somewhat better.
Indeed. You want to talk about the next character?
Yep, our next character, and arguably the one that shocked the most amount of people, Photographer. Sitting at number 9 under the top 10 right now, literally making the cusp, like right around the cusp. So I'll let you, Yalda, take over photo.
Okay, so Photographer is primarily a map control character, right? Like, he doesn't really have any particular chase abilities, and technically does not have chair guarding abilities, but that's kind of a lie. We're going to talk about that later. And yeah, everything is kind of just revolving around map control, his camera world, and stalling Cypher progress. But also consider the fact that he's able to slow down Cypher progress on the map for free. And even, like, if, let's say, you know, you kill certain people in the camera world, and then the photographer manages to find the first person, and then chairs them. That is, like, a very, very optimal situation for Joseph already. Even if he kills someone using Blink at half health and then chairs them, it's still like an incredibly good game, incredibly advantageous for Joseph. When you're on the ground and you're being chaired and like he just refuses to chase you, refusing any kind of mind gaming and just comes over and picks you up, even if you have like 100 magnets, 100 rugbies, you can't use them. This character just refuses to do any mind gaming, and by doing so, subdues every survivor. So really, just every photographer game depends on how good the photographer is at determining survivor locations, and not necessarily just how survivors counterplay. Because when the Joseph knows like where each survivor is and know what they're doing, there is no counterplay. The whole camera world collapsing mechanic also means that by stalling cipher progress, Joseph can create more rooms for opening and perhaps even get the win. In addition, what I said earlier about Joseph tear guarding, yeah, he technically does not have any tear guarding abilities, but also consider the fact that Joseph's attack recovery speed is the single fastest among all hunters in the game. And with 3 stacks of Berserk, which Joseph players should bring, the attack recovery speed when someone is chaired is absolutely ludicrous, and you can easily get a second hit the moment the survivor is rescued from the chair. Those are his major strengths. Those strengths are in many ways comparable to Hermit, which we will talk about later as well. But yeah, those are the reasons why Joseph is good. Now let's talk about the reason why Joseph is better, those being his weaknesses. His main weakness, obviously, as we know, is his pursuit. Mainly from the fact that he really relies on Blink. If he doesn't manage to pick someone up when the first camera world collapses, it's just reliant on Blink, and there isn't that much room for error if you don't do anything from the first 2 camera worlds. Furthermore, because of how just, again, naturally awful his pursuit game is, if the survivor manages to support each other relatively well, then that can seriously mess up his game plan as well.
Oh no, A tier. Man. It just means I'm gonna hate him even more when I play rank now. Cause, Jesus. All you people that meme on me now, banning photo, now you know. I just secretly knew all along that he was actually top 10, and I was leading you on to believe otherwise. I was gaslighting all of you. 100%. Without fail. But, I still can't believe
those
that...
advantages. Those advantages are even more magnified in a rank environment where there isn't sufficient enough communication between survivors.
That's what I wanted to mention as well, because it's like that's kind of where I wanted to overlap it to segue into Hermit, because a lot of people think of Photo and Hermit in the same light, where oh well they take a long time to get it down or something etc. You know, you could support against them, but the one thing people are not acknowledging is you don't have very much easy means to communicate with your team. There are lots of, and that stuff like that, the communication aspect of the game, people overlook that a little bit too much and just completely disregard how important it is to actually be able to tell your team, you know, what the hunter is doing, where they're going, maybe at this moment we should heal, at this moment we sell, etc. And not being able to do that effectively against a hunter that practically can move freely across the map without any means of tracking them, with Hermit being his orb with instantaneous movement, and then Photo being the camera world itself, unless you have someone camping in camera world at all times to track him, which in turn will slow down your Cypher Rush even more. It leads to just a chaotic mess where the Photo only needs one instance of good RNG, and then you just lose the match. And there's no recovering from that. And it's so annoying to deal with. Especially when you also have people that don't know how to heal against the Photo. Because they, for some reason, after they take a hit, and after they get hit in Photo World twice or something, or they get hit in Real World, they want to then get healed to full and not know to prime their heal instead. So that way then when the next Photo World comes, then they heal. Then after that, they reset to half, then you can heal again. People don't know those things. So then it just leads to, well, I'm a Photo, I get a free down now. And it's truly the most annoying nuisance thing in the entire goddamn world.
Okay, now that we're here and you mentioned it, do we want to talk about Hermit?
Yup, let's move up to Hermit.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to you rant. Let's go.
Oh, where do I start? Now, people were coming on me for Hermit because they were like, well, Hermit's actually weak because in tournament he doesn't perform well. And granted, yeah, that is true. Hermit doesn't really perform the best in a tournament environment where there is 4-man comps and, you know, you can actually counter comp the person that's playing the Hermit, because if there's a Hermit player, you're going to know that they play Hermit. So you're going to counter comp them. People kind of ignore those nuances when they come to tournament. And they just think, oh, Hermit bad because he got kited long time and Cypher pop, so he suck. And they just ignore all those other variables. So they were really shocked when we saw Hermit in S tier along with Ivy, Opera, Goatman being higher, etc. So, you know, people were not fucking with that, right? So the thing with Hermit, I think we all know what he is. He's just a map pressure hunter. Very, very cancerous, very unfun to face, at least in my opinion. His obvious recommended traits and personas, I think we all know: teleport, blink, warp, and then of course the standard inside detention. It's practically what you should be running. I literally don't see any other reason why you would run trump card on him when he just blatantly doesn't need it, in my opinion. Insolence just gives you that faster snowball, which is what you want as a Hermit, especially when you're always splitting damage upon survivors, making that so they all have to heal in mass, which means that's multiple people not decoding on top of the fact that you're already slowing down Cypher progress. Which then brings me on to the fact that he can unconditionally stall Cyphers just like Photo, just by simply connecting them, and that's it. Granted, it doesn't apply to all Cyphers. It's only 5 out of the 7 Cyphers on the map. But still, one of those Cyphers will probably always be locked off, which means in the early game, there's only 6 possible Cyphers. You have spawn selection, you know what Cyphers you can connect, and if a survivor really wants to go the extra mile, they either need to wait 40 seconds, or they need to then run to the other Cypher that isn't connected, which is still people not decoding, which buys you time to find that perfect chase. Onto his chase, he doesn't care about who he chases. All that matters to a Hermit is just the location of who he's chasing and whether that person has polarity or not. That's all that matters for a Hermit. A Hermit can virtually chase almost any character as long as they are not in a broken kiting area and they have polarity on them. Because if they have polarity on them, it's just opposite polarity hit, and then after that, from there, after first hit, the Hermit gives whatever polarity he wants to manipulate what survivors do what, or whether they're going to switch polarities or not. Or they're just going to split the damage even more to injure everyone across the map. And that's not even getting into his full presence, where he gets 4 stuns for whatever fucking reason, that he can just spam endlessly, it feels like, even though it's not obviously endlessly. With those, it makes him immune to practically any form of harassment or support that isn't happening during the kite, and that's still very risky, because if the Hermit is paying attention in any way and the person harassing or trying to support has a polarity, he just stuns them and then hits that person, and then the person that's getting kite, if they share the same polarity, will still take damage anyway. So even though they got distance, quote unquote, they will still end up getting potentially downed if they're that high on damage, or still injured anyway for the Hermit to then chase off after, making it easier for him. Body blocking can't work against him, because if you try body blocking, he'll just stun you, go around, and then hit the person anyways, ignoring the body blocker. Like, he just has so many tools to work with, especially when he gets to full presence. It's insane. And he can get to full presence easily because he's carrying insolence, and he doesn't care about who he's going to chase. He can go after a merc. He can go after a forward. He can go after an officer. He can go after whoever the fuck he pleases, to be honest. It's just a matter of where is the person at. Like, and it'll work out fine for him because the ciphers will be so fucking slow that it doesn't matter how long he gets guided for, to an extent. And then, you know, as much as I want to call him overpowered, he still has his minuscule weaknesses, being that obviously, you know, the damage splitting mechanic makes it a bit long for him to get it down, but I still am like, it's a 50-50 weakness, just in my personal opinion, because, yeah, it's going to take a while, but you're still injuring every other survivor, and if you're injuring the rescuer on top of chasing the person that you're chasing, that's just better payout for you, even if the kite does take longer, because then that makes them heal, slower Cypher Rush. Additionally, in the early game, obviously he only has access to, I believe it's 1 or 2 stuns every 8 seconds, 9 seconds. Yaldo, you can correct me on that.
12 seconds.
12 seconds? Okay. So, you know, even though his ability to just ignore whoever the hell he's on and just chase them if they have polarity and they're not in a broken area, you still as a hermit don't want to get kited to infinity and beyond, because at early game at low presence you just don't have the snowball potential at full presence. So obviously, you know, if he gets kited for too long, then of course he'll still lose the match, because at that point, you know, like you can't get kited for 3 minutes and then expect to still be able to get a win or a draw. But character still insanely broken.
Yeah, I'm gonna add 2 things to this, and it's about the damage splitting mechanic. I'm very glad that Zeus previously mentioned that this whole damage splitting mechanic, as much as it may seem to hinder him early game, is indeed a 50-50. Because even, like, I have had many games where I played as Hermit, and there are only maybe 1 or 2 cybers remaining, and they have a good bit of progress. However, due to damage splitting, either the rescuer is, like, injured and simply can't save, or, like, they simply, or the right person is being wanted, ordered, and the survivors simply cannot coordinate efforts to find someone to save. In that situation, a successful interception is enough for Hermit to simply turn the tables and win. Basically creating similar situations as Joseph, where no one on the field can simply rescue. And that is extremely advantageous for Hermit. Due to the entire mechanic of damage splitting, Hermit is also one of the greatest beneficiaries of Warp, because for Warp, it both functions as something that can help him chase and kill people faster regularly, and also help him change targets, because for changing targets, Hermit can fully do that, as long as the person has polarity. And the person that you're changing targets to probably already has taken some damage already, so it really doesn't matter. It just depends on, you know, again, where you chase the person, and whether that person has polarity. It doesn't matter who you chase.
No, it's so damn stupid, man. So again, hopefully for the people that like to say that Hermit sucks, or like to say that Hermit needs a buff because he loses in tournament, I hope this you know, actually sheds a little light onto it. While we're still in the S tier, actually, I guess we'll just move on right over to Anne, because Anne is a good player. She's a good hunter, but people were still surprised to see her in the S tier next to Opera Ivy. I'm gonna be real though, I don't think we really will discuss Opera and Ivy that much. I'll probably just give brief descriptions of them later on in the video just to get through them, but I think we all know why they're there where they are. But on to Anne, and Yalda, if you want to go at it.
Of course. Anne is primarily a pursuit and chair guarding archetype hunter, and usually you're gonna see Anne bring, typically it's detention and trump card, and maybe 2 stacks of destructiveness and 1 stack of berserk. Or there's also, of course, insolence, warp Anne. That's also very common in the current meta. Overall, Anne is perhaps like one of the most consistent hunters when it comes to pursuing. She has very good base movement speed and overall stats. The cat jump can basically catch in distance from anywhere between short and medium. And due to how consistent her pursuit is, there are very, very few survivors who can actually out-kite 3 cats and a warp in this meta. If you compare her chase to like something like Geisha, can you really say that an Anne with warp and insolence is necessarily weaker than Geisha when it comes to chasing people? Not really, right? In addition to that, Anne's cherry guarding is also very strong. She can easily get double downs even against a proper rescuer, or at least force tools, or at least prevent a rebound kite. That makes her cherry guarding very good. I suppose she isn't the best at map pressure, but just because of how consistent her chair guarding and overall pursuit game is, you really don't need to worry too much about map pressure. You can say that, yeah, okay, you're just pursuit based and you're just chair guarding based. You can't really win. You can't really capitalize off of that. But if you do manage to pull off a successful double down, even, and you continuously apply pressure to survivors, there's no reason why you can't win, right? This whole like chair guarding hit stun hit mechanic can stifle many rescue attempts late game, and you can win off of that as well. In addition, one other thing that makes Anne so consistent is her ability to silence any form of harassment, especially when survivors are attempting to protect someone who is on the ground. Of course, Anne does have some weaknesses, primarily before unlocking tier 1 or tier 2. Her pursuit isn't the best. It's still pretty good, but it's not like the best that she can be, obviously. And she is relatively vulnerable against survivor strategies where they protect someone who is alive. If you can like have someone who can like take cats or harass Anne to the point where cats are rendered useless, then she enters a relatively long period of cooldown where she can't really do anything. Combining the entire time that cats last on the field and the in-between cooldown of cats, it's about like 18, 19 seconds, during which Anne can't really do that much. But all of this requires like very, very close communication and accurate precision and execution of everything on the survivor side. So yeah, just a very, very consistent hunter.
Yep. I don't think we gotta say much, you know. I don't have anything much to say. You practically just said it all. Yeah, she's easy. You know, she can do what she has to do at a relatively with relatively minimal effort, and that just is invaluable. Well, that's
Speaking
the
of
correct.
easy, yeah. Speaking of easy, there's a saying in CNIDV where if you play Anne and you know how to draw the letter Y and you know how to draw the letter T, then you basically master the character. Also, I think like the only two like things in Anne's kit that requires some level of skill is number one, the silence jump, which means that like when you silence the cats, there's a 1 frame window where you can still hop towards the direction of the cat, and also like the corner jump where you kind of make your jump turn a corner and like do curves and whatnot. Okay, but those two things, it's like you definitely don't need to do those two things to win. And if you do think that you need to do those two, then the level of difficulty of doing those two things alone probably isn't even like 10% of what the other hunters need to do. So I don't see why Anne players complain or don't think she's not good. It's just so consistent. And in many cases, 3 cats on a warp simply is not something that survivors can counter.
Yeah. It's she's just life on easy mode when you play Anne, man. Life on easy mode when you play Anne. While we're still in the S tier, I guess we'll just finish up the S tier. So we'll just quickly run through you know, for me the 2 queens of the game until Goatman officially takes his crown as the king of the game when he's allowed in comp. So we'll just start off with the Shadow, Madam Ivy, chair guarding and map control hunter with her persona trait combos being more than likely just always inso detention and blink. In my opinion, you could also run warp on her. Warp is still a little 50-50 on her, so blink is always the safer bet. Now, despite all of her hellish nerfs, she still stands tall as of right now in the competitive meta before Goatman again is allowed in comp. For me, the best hunter in the game, simply because of her insane map pressure. Her end game is absolutely cancerous, and the mere fact that she can get kited for 3.5 ciphers and still come out with a draw, if not a win, if she's at full presence just off map pressure alone. Because every 43 seconds, it's 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit, 4 hit, 5 hit, and the cycle repeats because survivors need to heal. They can't decode because there's tablets, and if there's tablets, that means that the Ivy's gonna know where you are, which means she teleports onto you. The Yith only takes 38 seconds to repossess, which is only a 5-second difference from her full presence. So when you possess someone and you don't have full presence, you can still teleport to them anyway just to pressure them, and then now that your full presence is back after that 5-second window, you can now use the Yith to go after someone else to pressure them on the opposite end of the map or wherever the hell they are, and then get your guaranteed hit on there while just now forcing someone else to go to a different cipher or go heal or just be scared and whatnot. Not to mention, of course, her body being able, just having two split bodies, being able to do two different things at once. She can have a Yith pressuring one part of the map while she has her main body pressuring the other. This is prominently seen specifically in endgame when ciphers are popped and the gates are trying to be open. The Ivy will typically send her Yith to the person who has not been possessed. So whoever let's say the person that popped the cipher has not been possessed and their cipher popped near, let's say it's Red Church Backgate, the Ivy will send her Yif towards Backgate while her physical body will head to Wedding Gate. That way then if the person who hasn't been possessed tries to open the gate, she possesses onto them instantly, full presence, downs them, and then can immediately just send her Yith all the way back to the opposite gate whilst chairing the person who she just downed, making her ability to snowball for the next 2 minutes absolutely insane. It's so stupid what she's able to do. Not to mention her 100% corrosion mechanic, her gimmick. It can't be beaten with any like close combat tools or even flywheel. Flywheel timing is even hard because if you flywheel when you are not in a tablet, the corrosion immediately stops. There's no delay on the corrosion. So there's a lot of instances where you flywheel to force 100 corrosion, but because you flywheel at a tablet, you don't actually flywheel the 100 corrosion. You're just now stuck at like 99 corrosion, 98 corrosion, which in turn just means the second you look back, you're just staring at the eyes of death themselves. Along with that being that you can't use things like an antiquarian stick, you can't use things like an acrobat ball, a football, batters cricket balls, prospector magnets are because it's dependent on what she's doing. If she teleports onto you while you're decoding, then okay, it beats it. But if you just throw a magnet while she's chasing you, she just times the magnet like any character with a stun and just measure the distance properly. Okay, now I swing while going in, you take away attack recovery, and the cycle repeats. But while she is practically an invincible goddess in the end game, her early game is still relatively weak because she only has her main body to walk with, and the Ostracons still have a limited range, that being 9 meters per Ostracon. So, she doesn't have much to work with in the early game, on top of the fact that, 48 seconds per leech. It takes a while to actually build her up to the point where she becomes this invincible goddess that nobody can do anything about. So if you mess her up hardcore in the early game, there's a good chance you can still come out with a draw. And yes, when I say a draw, I mean you will still be fighting tooth and nail for that draw, even if she gets kited for like 3.5 ciphers. Because that's just how insane she is. But there isn't total like non-counterplay,
True. You can't like just pick her against any team in any map and just play her without a brain anymore. You actually kind of have to think a little when playing her. But that's not really saying much,
Yeah, it's like you
gotta
do the bare minimum as a hunter to play her, You gotta use your head. Oh, we'll just move right on to Opera Singer.
Right, and I guess I'll take over. Mm-hmm. Opera Singer is the first hunter in the tier list that we've talked about so far who is purely pursuit based. But her pursuit is so insane that she basically obtained this position on the tier list, right? Technically, she has no window of weakness because she runs so fast, and like the player playing the Opera Singer has to make a mistake for the window of weakness to occur. And the higher the tier you go, the less that's going to happen. Even without tier 2 presence, her chase is already threatening enough. And if, again, the person playing the Opera Singer does not make major mistakes, then chances are you're not going to kite 3 ciphers against an Opera Singer. Overall, she still stands very strong despite her nerfs. And actually, recently with the new engine update, her dashes are even smoother. So you're going to see better performance and a better experience among Opera Singer players. Since Opera Singer runs so fast, she is really good at forcing pallets and resources from survivors. You're just going to constantly have to do something to deal with her insane speed. There are very few situations where you can actually kite her. I guess one of them is on open ground, but not that's probably not going to last particularly long. If you truly want to kite an opera singer for a very long time, there is no option other than like palette stunning her or mind gaming around palettes. But chances are you're not going to pull that off every single time. If you don't palette stun her or try to work around palettes, then you simply cannot kite an opera singer. In tier 2, she's just going to melt whoever she meets in like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, and just apply continuous pressure, including in the detention phase due to just how fast she moves. She does have a few weaknesses, of course. She's not like super duper strong at the start of the game without the carpet and without tier 2 presence, the extended dash range and whatnot. Her pace rhythm is probably not going to begin particularly fast if she just begins chasing people outside of Naiad's range and survivors rotate early to in relatively advantageous position. In addition, I suppose if the survivor who has already been chaired has been sufficiently protected, then that can kind of mess up your game plan as well. But that's probably not going to happen very often because harassing against Opera Singer is also pretty dangerous, and Opera Singer just moves so fast that she can catch up within seconds.
Yeah. There's nothing really else much to be said. Like, it's just, she moves fast. If she makes her mistake, that's on her. She doesn't really have a weakness that isn't based on her own, just based on the player's actual skill level. Aside from, like, the palette breaking shit. But for that, you just kind of required to bring destructiveness, which is a nuisance, but it's not the biggest deal in the world, you know?
Yeah, her base stats are not great, but as long as the player doesn't make mistakes, again, you are in the active position. One thing, however, that we also need to kind of acknowledge is that the character, well, is no longer the best character in the game. Not necessarily because, like, Ivy took over, but also because of the nerfs. It's like, previously, perhaps if you miss, like, 1 or 2 dashes, you're still going to win. But now, the room for error isn't as large. So, again, just like Ivy, you kind of need to know what you're doing when playing her as well, and not dash into open spaces.
Yeah, that's about it. That covers it for S plus and S at least. So I guess we'll just start now, trickling down, going down the tier list. So we'll go moving on towards Geisha. No, Geisha's a very hot topic, especially because she recently got nerfed, and I know a lot of Geisha mains, cough cough, you know who you are, um, were complaining, oh, why is she getting nerfed when Geisha is so bad? When, from what Yalda has told me, CN actually values Geisha very high. You told me, right, Yalda, that there's 5 hunters that they look at to see if a survivor is good. And the 5 hunters, but not including Goatman, they look at are Ivy, Opera, Hermit, and Geisha. Those are like the 5 that they look at to see if a survivor is even
Correct.
remotely usable. So
Correct.
there is very much high value on Geisha in CN. So that being stated, Geisha is a pursuit type hunter. She's just like Opera, actually. Her sole role is pursuit. So I can already kind of see why they value her so much, because she is kind of just a baby Opera in the sense of she is fast, she just chases, and it's all mind games a good amount of the time, with the added on fact that she practically has a built-in blink every 9 seconds. Now, her recommended persona traits and combos are Teleport, Blink, Excitement, Trump Card, and Detention. So when you run Trump Detention, on top of the fact that you can bring Teleport, Blink, Excitement, your choice to TBH. Now, her strengths, just like I stated earlier, she's a very mind game heavy character. If you lose a mind game against a Geisha, it is almost a guaranteed hit. There is no like argument against that. If you lose the mind game against the Geisha, you will get hit. If the Geisha closes distance on you, you will get hit. On top of the fact that if you pallet camp against her for whatever goddamn reason, you will get hit. Every 8 seconds, it's a blink because of her. Well, not 8 anymore. Every 9 seconds now, it's a blink. So that alone makes her chased so cancerous. Especially if the Geisha is really good, because obviously Geisha is a really high skill ceiling based character. You know, she takes a lot of practice, she takes a lot of getting used to knowing where you can dash through, knowing what you can't dash through, knowing how you can manipulate your camera.
That's arguable. I don't think
Okay.
she's particularly high skill ceiling. It's like, I think compared to Opera Singer, who is also a purely pursuit based hunter, Geisha is easier in many ways. But Opera Singer, obviously, if you have enough finesse, then both the ceiling level performance and like the guarantee level of performance can be higher than Geisha.
Fair enough. According to the thing about Geisha as well that is kind of similar to a Hermit is that she can nearly chase any survivor that she wants. Aside from like extreme nuanced characters, I don't really have a particular idea of those extreme nuances because I don't play Geisha, but there's a lot of characters that some hunters in the A tier like Photo Feaster they can't chase that a geisha can chase, that being something like, for example, a patient or a forward, a mercenary, even, because of the fact that her pure ability is only distance, distance, distance. So, because of that, she doesn't care about your 50% football to get to a pallet because she'll just be right next to you at that pallet in the next 2 seconds. It's crazy how just fast she moves. And that's not even considering how she gets faster when she's at tier 2, in which she's practically there in the blink of an eye, which is, just like a certain hunter that's in the S tier. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. During the detention phase, her kill ability is probably one of the best, according to them in CN. And then her chair guarding is minuscule. You can gimp it a little bit with sometimes getting drop down hits by doing, the drop down blink. You go in the air, you drop down. Right before you drop down, you blink and swing. And then because you think the survivor is going to predict where you're going, now you got a drop down hit with a blink. And then boom, you now get your double down easy. Or you scuff the rescue entirely. Very minuscule camp, but hey, it's something better than nothing. But that doesn't change the fact that she has weaknesses, being unlike a Hermit or an Ivy, close range tools actually do work against her, that being stuff like Flywheel or an Antiquarian Stick, for example. Not to mention, she is prone to harassment. She has literally no defense for harassers at all aside from excitement. So if there are any harassers that are supporting mid-kite, she will get destroyed just a tad bit. It's
okay.
It's there. Weaknesses are there.
Yeah. And I'll talk about two things just to address the nerf and people's opinions on it. I'm first going to talk about why she got nerfed. First of all, the character was very strong, definitely valued among one of the best in CN. And also in CN, there are 800 with more than 10,000 points in the last season.
You said how many?
800.
800? You cut out every time like you say it.
800 Geisha players
800
with
Geisha
more than 10,000 points in CN.
Oh, wow.
Which is absolutely insane. Way higher than any other character with more than 10,000 points.
800 people have more than 10k points for her?
Yes, just shows how easy and simple to execute this character is.
What the fuck?
Yes, that is a true statistic. Well, and I'm going to also talk about why her nerfs do not matter too much. I can't say you can entirely ignore the nerf, but it definitely is minimal at best. And here are the reasons. In most cases, you're probably going to find yourself lacking like charges, like you don't have enough butterflies, and not the fact that you want to dash but your cooldown isn't off yet. Geisha, like by herself, still has to like take a hit, right? You put a butterfly and then you do a hit and then you throw another butterfly, you catch up with a dash, and you probably mind game around a pallet or a window or something like that, and you use another butterfly and you get another hit. But Geisha herself has a decently long attack recovery speed, and you definitely don't need to dash the moment the cooldown is off. Even if you do, now you kill people, or rather you get a hit in 16 seconds. You no longer get a hit in 16 seconds, but you get a hit in 18 seconds. That's a massive 2 seconds increase of the time you need to take a hit. That has to be insane, right? No, it definitely isn't. And considering the overall environment in the Steam server, and just, of course, the strength of the character herself, I can't say that her nerf is undeserved.
Fair enough. So, yeah, for you, a certain Geisha player out there, now you know why Geisha got nerfed. Going on down to the next A tier, we have Sculptor, which surprised me because on my tier list I put Sculptor in B tier. Granted, I guess it was tourney. I don't know. I have to I'll have to like check and cross reference my tier list from last season. But I know I didn't have Sculptor anywhere near A tier. I
Okay,
that I
I
know
can do
for
the
sure.
explanation. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can do the explanation. Okay, so Sculptor, I'm just gonna say it right now. She's kind of in the same, like in the same category as Feaster, where she's like secretly kind of broken, but she perfectly avoided all of the like anger towards top tier hunters, if you know what I mean. Um, in terms of archetype, she is like a true jack of all trades. In terms of pursuit, map pressure, and chair guarding, she has a bit of both. But she actually does pretty well in all of those categories. Usually with Sculptor in the newest meta, the popular build is Insolence with Warp, and she definitely is one of the biggest beneficiaries of Warp. Previously, Sculptor's issues are number one, like being reliant on tier two, and if you just decide to sell whoever's being chaired, then you're probably not going to get tier two, and you're not going to kill your next person very fast. And also, she walks on barefoot. Warp addresses both of the problems. Now, if Sculptor has someone on the chair, like you can't really say that saving is acceptable, nor can you say that selling is acceptable. If you sell, Sculptor is just gonna warp to the next person and then like begin her next round of pursuit and then get tier two. Anyway, if you come and rescue, she definitely is going to get tier two. At which point she's just gonna melt every survivor she sees, no question. Therefore, for all of those reasons combined, she is one of the easiest character in this tier to push for wins. Warp basically kind of fills in the last piece of puzzle to complete her kit. All of this, along with the tier one skill of throwing the chisel and then being able to pressure survivors from a far distance, makes her extremely well-rounded. Overall, yeah, just very very solid. Does well in almost every category, even when it comes to harassment. Because of how strong tier two is, it can be pretty dangerous.
To
So
try
yeah,
and harass against her, and I've been on the forefront of that. I would know. I've been punished by sculptors by full present statues by trying to get in over my head and harass.
okay. Of course, as we've said many times so far, she also has weaknesses. She ultimately is just reliant on tier two. Tier zero statues
Eh.
isn't consistent enough. Of course, that's only like temporary because of insolence and just regularly getting hits and gaining presence and whatnot. But sometimes you're just gonna find the system deciding not to judge a chip hit. Um, if you don't kill your first person fast enough, or if the survivor who has been chaired has been like supported really really well, like if you've been stunned by a forward for 6 seconds onto a wall and you can no longer see the survivor that's been chaired, ciphers are probably still going to be enough and you're going to struggle to kill people during detention phase. So yeah,
Yeah.
but like those are not really weaknesses and more of she could have done this better.
Yeah, understandable. Moving down on, we got
Really, yeah.
Dreamwitch. Ah, how the mighty have fallen. I remember the days when Dreamwitch was number one, and here she is, barely scraping her way to the top 10. Oh boy, man. You hate to see it, man. You really hate to see it. So, Dreamwitch, map control hunter, we all know this, brings Blinker Patroller with trump card detention, and in some cases actually insolence detention. I think we all know her strengths. She has excellent snowball ability, and if you make one mistake against her, that can very much make or break the entire game, turning it from a win to a loss, or vice versa if the Dream Witch makes that big of a mistake, which leaks a little bit into her weaknesses, but we'll get to that in a little bit. She has great interception potential when she's guarding chairs because obviously her being able to have one leech at the chair while being able to move another leech to where the rescuer cipher is to cut them off is a very strong ability. Added on to the fact that every single individual leech has their own separate cooldowns on the abilities. Aside from, you know, the patroller nerfs and the blink nerfs to where every single leech that uses them, they get an added on amount of time to them until they can use it again, just to prevent the literal infinite spam that was back like in season 4 and 5. However, her main weaknesses obviously is she has practically no chase at all. She's literally just like Joseph, where she's reliant on blink or patroller to get a hit and even get a down. Added on with the fact that if survivors are actually managing their leeches properly, as in they're deleeching, they're healing, she can struggle a lot for getting an insta down off chair, which means she actually has like decently high shots of getting rebound kited. Added on with the fact that just any character that can take multiple hits is an absolute pain in the ass for her, i.e. barmaid, barmaid, psychologist, even doctor. If you want to, by technicality, you can add her on there. So she still just struggles a lot, especially kite-wise, with all the characters that I've released that are just like hyper kiters. Like, you have things like Puppeteer now, you have things like Fire Investigator, who just gets so much distance, it's crazy. Cheerleader even like messes up with her a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah. Basically, currently with Sui builds becoming more and more popular, Dreamwitch is going to struggle more and more. And also at this point, Ivy is a hunter that can basically be seen as like the better performing Dreamwitch, especially considering how beyond like ridiculous Ivy's tier 2 is compared to Dreamwitch, who still has to walk on barefoot and relies on supporting abilities.
Yeah, just modern. Ivy is the modern day Dreamwitch now. Sanity. Moving now down on to the A- tier. I think we're just done hopping around now. So now I think now for the rest of the video, this is just gonna now be like formatted via tier. So the first characters that we talked about will just be broken down individually, and then now it'll just be okay. These are all of the A- tier characters. Blah 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 blah. I'll probably do that in edit. I'm just letting you know mid recording session how we're gonna do it. Regardless, Naiad, if you wanna now do Naiad.
Okay, of course. Naiad is primarily a pursuit and chair guarding hunter, but there are some caveats to those archetypes, which I will explain later. Primarily as a Naiad, you bring Insolence or Trump card along with Detention, of course, with Blink, or actually sometimes even Patroller. Naiad has some very glaring strengths, one of them being that her chase is pretty consistent. But consistent as in, you're probably not going to 3-cipher kite her, but as a Naiad, you're probably not going to kill your first survivor very fast either, because of like how the harpoon works and the very long backswing after the harpoon. You actually have to, methodically circle up an area and then push them out of the area, maybe get another hit, and then harpoon again, swim, and then get another hit, right? Still, Insolence Blink Naiad is one of the best hunters at getting draws. Naiad's close range chair guarding is still superior, and her basement camping is probably one of the single best in the game. Her pursuit is, again, very consistent, and ultra kiting her is very, very difficult. Because of how, like, her swim works, as in the dash does AoE damage, and so does the humanity circles, she can catch up very easily and can deal with harassment in many cases. Just because of how she's able to gain distance within short periods, she surpasses other pursuit and chair guarding hunters, like BonBon, for example. You're going to realize that for hunters of the pursuit and chair guarding archetype, for them to succeed in the meta, they have to have other strengths than just pursuit and chair guarding. For example, Feaster, you also have the information. You also have the information gathering ability. Whereas for Naiad, you can catch up distance and deal with many more situations that BonBon cannot deal with. Naiad has some glaring weaknesses as well. Like pre-warp Sculptor, she can't really deal with survivors selling the person on the chair, in which case she's gonna maybe struggle a bit to get tier 2, and it's gonna be relatively slow for her to begin her next round of pursuit, and she can't kill survivors quick enough during detention phase because of how swim works and how humidity works. overall, you need like pretty good execution with the character, and maybe a successful chair guard with Naiad to pull off the win.
Yep. Pretty simple, pretty basic. Nothing really much else needed to be said. She can be good at securing draws, but just winning with her is just the real task. And if you don't have your camp, obviously you know you're gonna move. You're not gonna perform too well. Moving on to the next hunter, we have Fool's Gold making it at the 12th spot on this tier list in A-. Fool's Gold was another hunter that I actually did not put too high in my ranked tier list, but in my tourney tier list, I was like, okay, you can get away with him. So Fool's Gold is just like actually Sculptor. He's a jack of all trades. He can chase, he can camp, he can map pressure to an extent, but it's still there. He can do it all. Obviously, you know, the standards is he just runs Blink with Trump Card and Detention. There's not really anything else I would say you would run with him unless you're trying to experiment with Insolence, but even then I won't know how that would really work out for you. But let me know if you do that. His chase is very well-rounded. It's very nice. You know, he can just, once he spawns in, throw pickaxe, a dash to pickaxe, and he's on you. Like, that's it. There's no real counterplay to him just being able to practically Geisha dash at you, you know? That's really just it. His camping is also pretty fucking annoying to deal with because it is instantaneous and it can clip you very easily. His camping is like old BonBon camp where it interrupts rescue animations. It's just like a Sculptor statue as well, pretty much. Where if he already puts the collapse onto the chair with the rock, which we'll get into the rock in a minute, which is his tier 1 presence. When he has the collapse on the chair, the second you try to interact with the chair, he throws the collapse on it. He throws his pickaxe at the collapse. If there's already a pre-existing collapse, the collapse will make you take chip damage. If there's not, then you won't take the chip damage, but if he pulls it back, then you will, which will then in turn interrupt the rescue. Which is why typically you see Fool's Gold pre-set up a collapse at the chair when they know the rescuer is coming. So that way then, when it comes to rescuing, they can wait for the rescuer to go for the rescue, throw the axe, they take a chip, now they have to sit there and wait for the axe to come back. And typically what happens is the Fool's Gold just plays this little waiting game where, you know, he sits there, waits for his pickaxe to come back. When it's like at a second before it comes back, the Fool's Gold will swing, hit the survivor then tries to go into rescue because, you know, oh, I took hit, I can rescue, but then the pickaxe comes out, which in turn makes them take another chip hit, which then it turns into a stuff if you're not a mercenary. Otherwise it turns into a double down situation. So his camp is just very annoying to deal with. Added on with the fact that he has pretty decent attack recovery. It's not crazy, but if you put like a stack or two into Berserker, it's not bad. It's not the worst thing ever. Like, you can make it work if you cut off the rescuer pretty damn early. And then his map pressure, like I mentioned earlier with the rock that he can put on. The rock, it does have a range. I don't know the exact range, but it's not infinite. From the looks of it, from when I've seen him play and how I've played him, it's like, I want to say like a 20-meter range, maybe a 25-ish, as far as he can like push the rock. But that rock practically builds up corrosion in a certain, collapse in a certain area. And then when he throws his pickaxe at something else that has a collapse, he will then cause the collapse at the rock to resonate with the collapse that's happening at the place he's at. Think of it if for JJK, Nobara straw doll technique. That's practically what he has, like unironically. That's what he is. That's what he has when it comes to the rock. He does it in one place, it happens in that place, but it also happens at the other. So which in turn scares survivors off of ciphers, because now they gotta play a guessing game of when is this motherfucker gonna throw his shit, because I don't want to take a free chip hit and give him presents, and how even maybe get double hit just for free while he's camping a chair. It becomes really annoying, especially because the rock does last 20 to 25 seconds. So, you know, that's 20 to 25 seconds that a survivor can't really decode that much. Which is not bad. It's not the worst thing ever. However, he does have his fair share of weaknesses, like every hunter that's not Goatman, you know? He does not have anti-harassment, like, practically. His only form of quote-unquote anti-harassment is him chasing the survivor, throwing the pickaxe back at the survivor that's on the ground, and then dashing back. And I don't really consider that anti-harassment because I can just follow you back. Like, You know? And if you mess it up, then you're just fucked. It's really dumb. It's not realistic to pull off. And even when he hits full presence, when he has the instant collapse, when he charges up the pickaxe, that's still not a form of anti-harassment. It's just cool. You can insta-chip me now. I'll just run in the open, and then you either basic hit me, or you now gotta use your ability to go all the way back. It's just he doesn't have the tools to defend himself, which means that if you're going up against characters like Forward, Survivor Prospector, Antiquarian, Batter, he'll just completely get played with if he doesn't bring excitement, and which will then in turn make his chase even worse.
Yeah. Two little things. I just checked earlier. Fool's Gold can actually summon the stone that creates unstable ground using his tier 1 skill up to 60 meters away.
Oh! Okay! I don't know math! Okay!
Okay. Another thing is that, okay, just like a TLDL version of Fool's Gold. You can just view him again, like in a very similar lens of Sculptor, where he might be more like successful in gaining distances, like medium distances, within short periods of time that Sculptor doesn't really have if she doesn't use Warp. Sculptor's ability to just melt survivors is something that Fool's Gold does not have. And Sculptor has some form of anti-harassment, whereas Full Gold can only deal with one survivor at a time and has no anti-harassment. He just really badly needs anti-harassment.
Yeah. Moving now on to... Oh, great. Fucking Wax Artist.
Right. I'm gonna talk about this character.
Yeah.
Okay. This character, well, where do I start? Okay, let's start with the basics. So, as we know, Wax Artist is primarily focused on pursuit as well as chair guarding. Usually with Wax Artist, you bring some combination of Blank, Warp, Trump Card, or Insolence. Currently, the Warp Insolence playstyle has been relatively mature, and I'm going to talk about that specific playstyle in a while. Wax Artist can down survivors pretty efficiently if, like, the survivor is in Wax Artist's line of sight. Even if you're, like, pretty far away and you're in open ground or just, like, in a not particularly advantageous position, Wax Artist can get hits very quick. Insolence plus Warp basically allows him to kill the first survivor relatively consistently, and to also at least guarantee that he'll be able to get tier 2 hot wax by the time he chairs the second survivor, or rather he chairs the first survivor the second time. Among all of the other hunters who are focused on pursuit and chair guarding, Wax Artist's ability to apply map pressure is probably the strongest, just because of how he's able to straight up just block up ciphers, literally, like you can't decode the cipher from a medium distance. After tier 2, like, Wax Artist's Hot Wax is just absolutely stupid and ridiculous. Hot Wax insta-kill has pretty much no counterplay. If you want to, like, counterplay it, you have to, like, use very specific tools or time flywheel perfectly, and that makes Wax Artist's pursuit and camping game extremely strong. Oh, and in addition to that, Wax Artist is, like, naturally resistant to harassment because of how Wax Coat reduces the stun time and how, you know, Wax spills over when you stun Wax Artist. Overall, you can just view Wax Artist as a hunter who tends to get draws, usually, and is anti-harassment. However, if you, like, just don't kite him properly, or you end up trapping yourself in a not particularly advantageous spot, and he gets hot wax early, you're gonna die a horrible death. Wax Artist, however, is still, as I have been hinting throughout this whole time, reliant on tier 2 presence, the hot wax, for his kit to be actually complete. But if it is complete, then it's actually terrifying. Before tier 2, he can't really chair guard properly. It's not like Disciple, where you can actually do something like, hit, and then stun, and then hit again. The wax bomb only lasts on the ground for like 5 seconds. It's like impossible to hit and then expect for the wax bomb on the ground to fill in that remaining 25 wax needed to stun the survivor again and then hit them again. That's almost impossible. Like, overall, still, the performance of Wax Artist is just heavily dependent on map and terrain. You're probably not going to bring out Wax Artist in Arms Factory. You're probably not going to bring him out on Leo's Memory, nor on Red Search. And under like unfavorable conditions, especially unfavorable terrain conditions, there's just no guarantee that you're going to kill people fast enough and get that tier 2 early and push for wins. Zeus?
Oh yeah, my fault. Makes sense. I guess I just have without a doubt, just a fully born hatred for this character because I find him really fucking annoying. Because as you stated, coal to hot wax is the cheapest, most bullshit, annoying thing to actually face in this damn game. I despise it. I hate it. I wish it did not exist. It's annoying. But obviously, I want to add just another thing, just I guess a little into comp for what I see. Like, Wax Artist also just gets killed by rotation. If he gets rotated on like any map, it's just impossible for him to even come back from the match because he won't get his first hit until like damn near 2 minutes into the game. Like there was I think what was it? I played with Hikaru Sansi Z's like 2 days ago. If not, it was actually yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. We got a Wax Artist on Chinatown, and we just rotated him. We just rotated the Wax for like 2.5 for like 2 minutes. Didn't get his first actual like start of chase until every cipher was like touched up to like 30, 40, 50%, and he ended up losing because he just couldn't catch up because of the rotation because he was already deprived of presence as it is. So rotation is also just another very easy way to deal with Wax Artists because can't get a kill if you don't have a chase. Moving on now to Bloody Queen, people's fan favorite, infamous for her title as the Tie Queen. Bloody Queen, a pursuit and map control hunter whose recommended personas is just Blink Patroller and then Trump Card Detention. Pretty standard. I don't think I would ever need to see a confined space Blood Queen, but the day I do might be the day I quit this game, so keep me posted if that ever happens. So, her obvious strengths is her mirror. Her mirror being able to just fundamentally destroy and break the laws of physics, being that it can just go through whatever the fuck it wants and hit you through whatever the fuck it wants, which is insanely good. However, the mirror still, you gotta know what you're doing with the mirror. You can't just toss it and call it a day. Her mirror allows for very easy cipher pressure and map pressure from long distances. Map pressure being as if she can just mirror to another place whenever the fuck she feels like it after every 15 seconds. Cipher, just if she's camping a chair, she can just throw a mirror at a cipher and now that person is playing, will the mirror actually hit me? Because that mirror hitbox is some of the most horseshit thing I've ever seen. And you got to play that game for 15 seconds. You got to respect that mirror because if you don't, you're going to be giving her a free hit, which makes her mirror more cancerous with the ability to rotate it and adjust it accordingly if she is close enough to a survivor, making it easier for her to actually get a hit on any opposing survivor. Not to mention, you can't really support or harass against a Blood Queen. Like, the contrary to popular opinion, you can't really support or harass her because there's no way to support or harass against the fucking mirror. Your items just go right through her and that's it. So any form of support or harassment against her is practically futile. Like, unironic, like, it is practically just no point in doing it unless it is the main body and the mirror is on cooldown. Otherwise, you will just get punished for it. However, while she has all these valid number of strengths, she still has her weaknesses, being that she is a very high skill dependent hunter, and that is going to be a trend that we're going to be seeing as we go down through these other hunters in the A- and lower tiers. She is hit or miss. If the player knows what they're doing, then she can be insanely scary. But if the player has a potato for a brain, then she is not that scary. She is pretty fucking easy to deal with. On top of the fact that she can't deal with Flywheel, which is very prominent in the meta. A lot of characters who are bringing either Sui builds or running Flywheel. So not being able to deal with one of those things hurts her pretty bad. Not to mention she has pretty bad base stats, along with the fact that she has a long skill cooldown. Only being able to mirror every 15 seconds means that if you miss your first 2 mirrors, you will practically lose the game. Unless there is like insane survivor error.
Yeah. But I'm just going to say 2 things. With the entirety of this character's strength being concentrated on her mirror, it's also very important to realize that her strength is also like highly dependent on the number of survivors, like survivor characters that can like consistently make mirrors useless. For example, like forward can easily make a mirror useless by using less than a quarter of the ball. Cheerleader can easily make a mirror useless by using the rapid speed boost. Um, those characters have been getting more and more common with the addition of characters like Fire Investigator and characters like Weeping Clown becoming more popular.
Yeah.
In which case, that's not to say that Mary is bad, because ultimately you pick after the survivors pick their characters. The fact that some survivors counter you isn't necessarily bad, because you can just not pick the character. And the survivors aren't going to pick those characters that counter you every single time. Also, previously I mentioned that Goatman is almost entirely better than Mary, and that is definitely true, because Mary can't chair guard, whereas Goatman can chair guard and pull off some insane stuff with, like, you know, forcibly tearing people to basement and whatnot. And also, Goatman has much more flexibility with its skills because of the energy and cage mechanic thing. I can only say, with respect to all Bloody Queen players out there, that Bloody Queen isn't useless because Goatman exists, because Goatman permanently sits in the ban spot. So Bloody Queen is still valid. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yo. Moving down on, we have Evil Reptilian, Mr. Infinite Jump himself, going on down here.
Okay, so Evil Reptilian is it's not particularly easy to compare this character to another hunter. I guess the closest comparison would be Disciple, but that's still not particularly accurate for reasons I will explain later. Ultimately, as I said before, Evil Reptilian is a pursuit and chair guarding based hunter, and you usually are going to bring Blink Peeper's Confined Space Split's Detention on him. You're not really going to bring Trump Card because he can't really afford to do that. His gimmick is that he jumps, right? And the jumping in the early game, when starting your first chase, allows Lucino to close in distance pretty well. And that can basically counter marathoning or like constantly rotating, right? However, in closer distances, he's gonna not have that easy of a time all the time, because his jumps can be terrain dependent. In certain places, you simply can't jump. And ultimately, there's no guarantee that if you jump, you're going to get the hit. A, because Flywheel exists. And number two, it's ultimately just a mind game. It's not like Geisha, where you have like unreactable dashes and then hits. However, one thing that Lucino definitely surpasses Geisha in is with regards to chair guarding. The crash damage is area of effect, and so it can easily create double down situations and make body blocking futile. Survivor support that don't cause Lucino's jumps to become useless aren't really going to do anything, because you're just going to jump a few times and then catch up anyway. After tier 2, the infinite jumps does give him pretty good map pressure potential. Even though at that point you're going to realize that even though you have infinite jumps, you're probably not going to have enough strength to do that. Like to jump from maybe one gate to the other. So yeah, that can still apply a decent degree of map pressure, but overall, like with all of his buffs in the past few months, this character's strength has come to a relatively stable level, and he's definitely still a valid pick in a good number of situations. As I have hinted before, Lucino has reactable skills. Like, you can deal with Lucino's jump in close quarters with certain tools and with Flywheel because they're reactable. They're not, like, guaranteed. They're still fundamentally mind games. Before Tier 1, his chase is therefore just mediocre because it's also terrain dependent. And, yeah, it's not guaranteed. Compared to, as I hinted previously, a character like Disciple straight up refuses to do any mind game. He's just going to stun you in front of the pallet and then hit you. So overall, just like a less consistent version of Disciple, I suppose.
Yep. Just again, another very high skill dependent hunter. If you're not proficient already in the hunter, then it's not really your pick. You know, you're going to struggle with him. Moving on now to the final hunter in the A- tier, Nightwatch. Everyone's favorite trash can. Cough, cough, Z's. So, he's a pure chase hunter, just like we've seen from the others, from like the likes of Opera Singer and Geisha. Recommended persona trait combos being Blink and Warp with Into Detention or Confined Space and Detention. Not really a trump card kind of guy because he just wants draws and nothing else. That's practically it. He's just a draw form. Now, he has his obvious strengths being his Windwalk and, of course, the Tempest ability, which complement each other very well in the sense that he can speed himself up while he slows you down. So, you know, it's pretty hard to gain distance when something is speeding up on you while also then simultaneously slowing you down by 70%. It can be really fucking annoying to deal with. And at that, after he gets full presence, his pursuit becomes extremely consistent, with that being he's always able to have wind charges at all times, being that now he gets 2 stacks of wind charges when he's using Tempest or the Strong Wind to pull survivors near him. Being on the fact that the Strong Wind also pulls survivors near him, making it that if you get caught in it, whatever distance you just made is obsolete against the Nightwatch. At that, he also has good distance gaining abilities being his dash after tier 1. So that means whatever distance you make, if he's not pulling you closer to him, he cuts instantly in the sense that he makes it up by going just straight to you. And at that, because of that good distance gaining ability, especially when he has detention, he's good at intercepting people who might want to backdoor rescue, or just in general, intercepting the rescuer as their way coming over to the chair. And he has decent attack recovery, which means there's a good chance to get a double down. However, he does have his fair share of weaknesses, being that his chase does fall short before he reaches second presence. It's very easy to rebound kite a Nightwatch with the correct amount of tools and with the correct survivors in the area. So if you're in a team with coordinated survivors that have some kind of support, it can cause him to waste energy against survivors that he doesn't want to waste energy against, while at the same time also making it that the survivor he's originally chasing gets distance. So it becomes just this nuisance game where, you know, like he has to choose whether he wants to use wind stacks to stop the support, which kills his kiting, or he has to then chase after the person who is being supported, but then get harassed the entire time, which in turn can make him take a longer time to actually get that second down. So because of that, Nightwatch just kind of falls in this weird limbo state where he's practically an all-or-nothing draw kind of character. You put your all in him to get a tie and nothing else, and that's it. If you could go for more, go for it. But it's not very reliable to try and push for a win against a Nightwatch, because he just doesn't have that win potential until it's practically too late in the game.
True. The best bet of winning as a Nightwatch is to have someone in your hands with, like, when you have like three survivors remaining on the field and the last Cypher Prime. You ensure that you have someone in your hands, and then you quickly kill them once the last Cypher pops, and then maybe use your speed to kind of do your best to kill another person. That's the best you can do. In many other cases, you're just going to get draws. This character would be worse if the meta isn't like leaning towards pursuit type hunters, because we have to admit that after tier 2, his pursuit is pretty consistent and very good. And also because of another character, that being Weeping Clown. Nightwatch is one of the best counters against Weeping Clown. Not only because, you know, regular Tempest can slow down the rocket, but Cyclone straight up pulls Weeping Clown off of the rocket. So, yeah, there is some validity in that. But other than that, he still can't really tear guard too well. Map control can be pulled off, but it wastes a good bit of energy and weak to harassment overall.
Yeah, pretty standard stuff right there. With that being said, we're finally going to be done with the A- tier, and we're going to be moving on to B+. And opening up, actually, B+ is going to be probably one of the most controversial picks on this list, being Gamekeeper, the absolute epitome hunter of horseshit, and one of the most prominent picks in the KOA that literally just passed. So without further ado...
the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, no, literally.
Okay, there are multiple reasons why Gamekeeper is no longer the freaking borderline broken character that he used to be. This character is more lean towards pursuit and tear guarding, but that's not to say he has no map control abilities either. He kind of does a bit of everything. He's not particularly strong on each particular department, but if you combine all of them, it's pretty good. Usually as Gamekeeper, you bring Blink or Peepers, and then the combination of Trump Card and Detention, right? The hook is still pretty good. The distance is good. The backswing is good. It grants him both distance gaining and hit potential at a pretty good range. His pursuit is pretty well-rounded with the pretty good hooks, as previously mentioned, and the traps that can be used to like cut off certain locations and whatnot. To a certain extent, because of how the hook works, and how little the backswing is, you can deal with both flywheel and broken windows to a certain degree. He's not really countered by either trait, and for him, chair guarding is mostly just about mind gaming, in the sense that not even the Gamekeeper player will know whether you will successfully chair guard. The hook itself is difficult to react to, or like actually I should say unreactable. It's pure luck and pure mind gaming. However, if you do successfully terror shock the person who's coming to rescue, then it could be absolutely devastating. Because at that point you probably have tier 2 as well. And basement camping as this character is extremely difficult to deal with. In addition, in terms of map pressure, you can use traps to block off certain ciphers, and then don't forget that if you previously hooked someone and that person ran away for whatever reason, throughout the next minute, the survivor's location that you previously hooked will be revealed twice, so you probably won't lose the target. And you can also use the trap to block off the dungeon, the gate, and certain windows and pallets. As good as all of this sounds, really, the previous nerfs after, the broken piece of ass that he was in Koa 7 kind of made him fall out of the expected range of stats to be competent. His pursuit strength isn't consistent enough anymore, because of the nerf to the traps as well as the decreased radius of the hook shock after he hooks onto an object. So there's less room for error. If you don't play perfectly and you don't hook properly, you're probably still going to lose. Compared to other characters, say Nightwatch or Sculptor or Wax Artist, his tier 2 ability really only grants him the ability to close in distance relatively efficiently. It's not devastating. It's not an absolutely insane change like all of those other characters. And it's not like when Gamekeeper has tier 2, you can't kite him at all, right? If you want to talk about infinite stuff, I think most of us would agree that Lucino, Evil Reptilian's infinite jump, has the ability to apply even more pressure onto the survivors. What's better about Evil Reptilian's jump is that because it is, high up in the air, it can ignore certain pallets and windows and high structures. Gamekeeper can't do that. You can't just ignore structures and pallets and terrain with just the hooks alone, right? Because they just only go straight. And they're not going to be effective as before because, as I previously mentioned, the nerfed range of the shock.
It is a pain.
Overall, you need to play well to win as this character. I'd say if you want to get a draw, Gamekeeper is still going to be pretty good at that, but less room for error.
Still fuck the hook though. Still fuck the hook. That hook is still bullshit. Anyways, next hunter in B+, Garda 26, aka BonBon, the actual bane of chair camping, the literal spawn of Sainted when it comes to camping. This guy was a pain in the ass when he first released, and his camping is actually still a pain in the ass right now. Not gonna lie, if executed well though. It's still gotta be relatively good. So, BonBon, Pursuit and Chair type of hunter, with his trait combinations just being Blink, Warp, or Peepers. So, Peeper BonBon still very much a popular thing. So, his strengths being, he has the potential to melt survivors at mid and close range distances, and just like Feaster actually, he can also force survivors to go to certain kiting spots. Granted, it's not guaranteed because the bomb obviously has a time limit on itself. It's a bomb. If it doesn't have a time limit, it's never gonna fucking explode, So he can still do the job at trying to manipulate the kite here and there, but it's not as consistent as, say, something like a Feaster. And then the thing that, in my opinion, just hard carries the character as a whole is his camping. As I said earlier, his camping is quite literally one of the most cancerous things in this game, even still to this day. Especially when he gets at full presence, when he can just start spamming them shits just endlessly. Like, he's out here just throwing them like candy. He's like, you get a bomb, you get a bomb, you get a bomb, you get a bomb. He just does not care about it. So it's absolutely cancerous to deal with. However, he has his horrendous weaknesses that I would honestly say. And the most common one is that he has literally no map pressure at all. The most common thing to do against a BonBon if someone dies is to sell. And he cannot do anything about it. Just blatantly speaking. Unless he leaves the chair entirely, which then in turn gives the survivors a free rescue, which means now the BonBon loses his chase. He has no map pressure at all, and the survivors are just free to sell and call it there, and they have absolutely nothing to worry about, which makes it extremely hard for the character to pull off a win, because while the survivors are selling, that means they can cipher rush easily. However, his little bit of lack of map pressure is fixed by warp, which is it's there, but it's nothing really too game-changing, because at the end of the day, he still is just going to have to leave to go make sure that nobody's going to try and do some sneaky backdoor rescue bullshit. On top of the fact that he also suffers from the walking on barefoot problem. He has no means of actually gaining distance on survivors aside from just chasing them on foot, which becomes a bit of an issue for him, which again though is also fixed up by warp, but still a little inconsistent, because obviously with the warp it's a reactable thing. The survivors can react and change accordingly to where the warp is, so it's not something crazy. As well, BonBon's full presence doesn't actually make that much of a significant change if it's not used on camping, unlike Sculptor, in which Sculptor's tier 2 allows her to just completely destroy survivors wherever the fuck they are. Along with the also added fact that it actually helps her track survivors, because if they're within a certain meter radius of the Sculptor using her full presence, it'll just auto-target to whatever survivors nearby. So she also has the ability to information gather, which is something that BonBon lacks. BonBon practically is purely carried by his camping and nothing else.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up what I want to say about the character. Now, on to Soul Weaver.
Weaver.
Okay, this character is actually deserves more attention, I feel, than than she currently has. The character is very odd in many ways. In terms of archetype, Soul Weaver is a purely pursuit-based character, but there are many caveats to that. In terms of recommended persona and trait combinations, usually you see Blink or Warp on Soul Weaver, along with a trump card and Detention. Perhaps you need like a few stacks of Destructiveness to increase your pallet breaking speed as well, because Soul Weaver's base stats are actually just beyond horrendous. The pallet breaking speed is the single slowest in the game. It is unbearable. You kind of need to bring Destructiveness to solve that issue. But anyway, we're going to talk about her strengths first. Soul Weaver's major strength is that she is not afraid of early game rotation at all, because in the meantime, you're just going to collect webs, and once you have 3 stacks of webs, you're just going to kill whoever comes close to you. There's no way to counterplay that. You're just going to like move at 200% speed, and then like get to the survivor space in 2 seconds, and then get a hit. Also with how just unreactable and like ambiguous her attack force swing is, she's able to counter Flywheel, because like survivors are just going to be scared, as well as like make using many close range tools pretty dangerous. In terms of chair guarding, you can create situations where you like control the survivors' health with web shot, or if you like get to the right amount of presence, you can do the double web shot. But it's not the most consistent thing in the world. If you do pull it off, like if you make someone fail a rescue in front of the chair, then you straight up just win, because Spider's balloon attack is the single best in the game. There's no doubt about that. Continuing what I said about her weaknesses, Soul Weaver, as seemingly broken as her 3 stacks of web and then getting the hit is, if she somehow fails, whether it's by, the Soul Weaver herself making a mistake, or, successfully rendered useless by a certain survivor tool, then she's kinda in a bad position. Because the webs themselves recharge pretty slowly. It's not like Goatman's cage, which in comparison is so stupid and basically has unlimited energy after tier 2. That will put Soul Weaver into an extended period of weakness where she's probably not gonna, land any attacks because of how awful her base stats is. She really needs the webs to, make her overall kit complete and make her pursuit threatening. So yeah. She's still, a very valid hunter to go for draws, or even if we, put it more extreme, to ensure that at least you get a 1k? Because, I'm just gonna stand there and collect 200 stacks of webs. What are you gonna do, right? However, yeah, it still requires a good bit of execution when you have 3 web stacks, and you really need to ensure that you get the hit in.
Mm. Yeah, practically just that's just Weaver. She's very simple. It's just bread and butter kind of thing. You do what you do what you can. That's really it. On to the next one. We have, where's Percy at? There he is. Number little Perkinator. We have Percy. So, and also, by the way, this is just really funny because the guy that can't chair is a buff Wheeling Clerk, which we'll get to them in a little bit. But Percy, he's a chase/map pressure hunter with his most common traits being warp, teleport, with just attention. His strengths is the fact that he, like a Fool's Gold, can just spawn on top of you and you can't do jack shit about it. He just dashes at you, dashes again, and just like that, the kite has started. You've had no time to rotate. You have no idea what's going on, and all you know is now there's a Percy with a big-ass sword ready to just slap you across the face. So, because of that, it's pretty easy for him to start a chase. At that, he does not actually need to fear harassment, because Percy just has this really funny gimmick where he just straight ignores it. Because the devs thought, hey, what if he at above 50 energy, when swinging, just says fuck harassment, fuck any sort of CC at all. Enchantress stuns, Prospector, Forward, Batter, Acro, yes, even Acro, with his fucking balls. Who else? Forward. Just any stunner, any
Antiquarian.
Antiquarian. Any stunner, anything that can minuscule interact with the hunter. He's just immune to it when he swings. And guess what he's going to be doing a good majority of the time? Swinging. Yeah, who guessed it, right? Not to mention, he not having to chair actually comes in pretty clutch, especially when you get to endgame and you have this little thing called claustrophobia, which makes your gate opening speed really fucking slow when all 4 survivors are up. And because you don't need to chair and everyone's down, there's a good chance that all 4 survivors will be up, but at least 2 of them will probably be dead on knock. Which makes it that now they have to wait 10 seconds before they can actually open up the gate up to par, which in turn then gives you easy chances to actually be able to fucking win the match even. You unironically could potentially win the match just off of that. However, he has his fair share of weaknesses. He cannot guard chairs because he has no chair guarding. So that means that unless the Percy is camping a dead body, he has no kind of map pressure or cipher pressure at all. Because he's going to be sitting there for 3.5 fucking minutes waiting for someone to die on the ground. Which is really fucking stupid. Not to mention, having to deal with 4 people endgame is still pretty annoying, especially if you don't have the target you want to have, because typically survivors won't have a person who's dead on knock opening the gate. They'll have someone who can take the knock, open the gate, because, he can't chair, so if they open the gate, they just crawl out and tell the Percy to go fuck himself. It's really funny sometimes.
Yeah, so, overall, not being able to chair guard or just not chairing people brings more disadvantages for Percy than advantages. Because not being able to chair guard fundamentally goes against the logic of the game, which is to eliminate one person Because like you really need to eliminate someone before the last cipher pops, you are forced to focus on the person who you killed as Percy. However, in order to slow down cipher progress, you also have to go out. That makes things really awkward. But yeah, previously, I had this theory where if Percy becomes capable of chairing survivors, then he would become the absolute most broken hunter in the entire game. However,
agree.
with the covered environment, I no longer think that way. Actually, what do you think? Where do you think Percy will be placed if he was able to chair survivors? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, actually, I think me personally, I think he'd be in this metagame. I think he'd be at A+ minimum. I think he'd be in top 10.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I don't think he'd be S anymore just because the survivors that would just deal with him insanely. But if he could chair guard, man, he'd be so annoying to deal with. He'd be so good.
True.
It's so the idea of a Percy just camping, standing on a dead body for 3.5 minutes just to watch it wither away. I don't know why that's so funny to me. It's like, yeah.
And like, you can see maybe so many clips of the desperation moment of Percy where you have 4 survivors crawling out of the gate.
And you're just praying to God that somebody dies. You're just like, please, for the love of God, die.
Okay, Percy, put down your sword and drag the survivor on their foot over to the...
Real. Just drag him over. Oh my God. On to the next one, we have Wu Chang. It's actually pretty higher than I expected him to be, I'm not gonna lie.
Alright, want me to take over?
Yep.
Okay. So, for Wu Chang, this character is pretty much map control focused. Like a certain other character we're gonna talk about later down the tier list a bit more. You might already have guessed who they are, but for now we're gonna focus on Wu Chang. For Wu Chang, you're probably gonna bring Blink or Peepers with a combination of insolence and detention. Wu Chang's strengths are primarily in the sense that he doesn't like perform superior in a rank environment, but it definitely does give him certain advantages in an environment where survivors do not communicate with each other efficiently. The Umbrella teleport cooldown is overall pretty short, and he can quickly begin new rounds of target changing and pursuit. Once one survivor is eliminated, you can basically, as a Wu Chang player, view every cipher on the map as a cipher that you can readily guard, just because of how short the Umbrella cooldown is. Without sufficient communication in the rank environment, like, just straight up a teleport with the Umbrella to your face can be difficult to deal with. You might say, hey, well, you can't survive with just, pin the hunter, beware the hunter is changing target. Well, you have to consider that, A, it also has a 7-second cooldown in terms of how often you can message, and number 2, if the Wu Chang player knows what they're doing, then they can bait out messages. Yes, that is a thing. You can bait out messages to send the false information. Wu Chang can also deal with survivors' support to a certain degree. If the Umbrella still works, like if you get stunned in place for a few seconds and you can still figure out where the survivor that you want to kill is going, you can teleport there, that's no problem. However, overall, his pursuit ability is still left something to be desired with. After tier 1, it's just about okay. But ultimately, that does not change the fact that he struggles against harassment and flywheel, and just how much he relies on, getting a lucky Umbrella in the early game.
Yeah, he's just an RNG dependent hunter to all hell. Which is it's not as RNG dependent in my opinion as Photo, because, Photo just finds everyone and you just lose. But he still requires some kind of RNG to help him in some means, because if the survivors are still good at rotating out, assuming that the survivors, even with baited out pings and whatnot, they're still able to run around the map efficiently and still kite the Wu Chang anyway, then it won't really matter if the messages are baited out to that much of an extent, because he'll still get kited And obviously, again, like the existence of flywheel just hurts him a lot because you can flywheel siphon, you can flywheel a bell, so it just practically makes one of his abilities futile for a 20-second portion, which is pretty massive, especially if you start splitting ciphers if he is cipher pressuring.
Indeed.
Next up on the breaking wheel, the Will brothers themselves. Now, I already have an idea of why Wheel is down here, but I'm going to hope that I'm correct on this. My personal theory of just Wheel's down here is because Wheel is literally hit or miss. You're either good with him or you're not. And because of that, that's just not consistent enough for the means of him being great. You got to put so much time investment into a character just because of how skill dependent he is. And even then, if you're not like the literal embodiment of God at him, you will just probably lose almost every fucking match you play. But we'll see. So, archetype, pursuit, and map, with his recommended persona / traits being blink, with then any combination of trump with then insolence and detention. So you can run trump card trump card detention, insolence detention, insolence trump card, detention trump, like, you know, like the possibilities are there. His strength being that during late game he can just move from A to B in the span of 8 seconds. It's so fucking annoying. It's so stupid. You know, he can just move from point A to point B without any real concern. So it makes his map pressure and cipher pressure really fucking good. And that is that's what you want in a hunter. Like that is good. You want that in a hunter. You want your map pressure to be very good. Not to mention that he completely shuts down looping as a whole, which is like a very like ingrained niche. We're kind of in a transitional kite meta as it is already. Being, you know, the characters that we're facing, we want to always be able to transitional kite them, but we can't because of the existence of a certain goat in the game. So being able to cut off loops and just being able to keep the survivors from transitioning effectively is very good. As well, like most of the hunters that we've talked about previously, he's able to cut off rescues pretty easily, which means that he has a decent shot of getting a double down situation. But he does have a 5-second window where he could just get fucked over because, you know, you can't spike someone back to back. You do need to wait 5 seconds before the next spike is available to be given to a survivor. So, you know, there is that little window of opportunity. But still, not a bad with all his with all his traits. Now, his weaknesses. And I think if you've played Breaking Wheel, I think we know what's the #1 weakness to this character. That being flywheel. He can flywheel, you can flywheel full presence, you can flywheel snap, you can flywheel him while he's in his wheel to force out a 5-second transitional period where he cannot spike you. Flywheel absolutely kills this character. On top of that, his base form is like susceptible to harassment. If he is not in wheel, he will get bullied practically by any coordinated team that uses harassment efficiently. Whether it's an antiquarian, a prospector, a forward, a batter, the list goes on for the harassers. He will get fucked up. Not to mention, if he's in base form, survivors with good distance gaining tools, like a fire investigator, or a forward, or an antiquarian with the little movement speed from her stick, the list goes on. He cannot catch up unless he is in wheel, and when he is in wheel, he cannot give a hit unless it is with a spike, and then the cycle repeats. He gets out of wheel, you get distance, force him back into wheel, he catches up, your abilities back off cooldown, then you get distance again, and you just repeat the cycle endlessly, and it just hurts him so much because now he doesn't have a down, and it's been already like 2.5 minutes into the game. And at that, he's just like, he's hyper reliant on full pres. The good thing about full pres is I think a year ago now they made it that you can only flywheel full presence once per game, per character, per player. If that's still a thing, if I remember that correctly.
I really don't know about that because I don't play wheel enough or at all.
Yeah, what I remember is that they did do that. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comment section below, but I remember that being a thing because they did it to Naiad and to Wheel to make it that so that way then they can deal with flywheel easily. I remember that being a thing. And people like saying
overall, the cost performance ratio of this character is kind of awful because you just before tier 1 where you get the extended spikes, at least you just need constant precision with this character and a lot of practicing. I'm surprised Breaking Wheel players don't throw up after playing like two games. And it's like how do I put it? This character is pretty extreme because once things really go his way, it's really goddamn annoying, and survivors are gonna struggle to like run around and coordinate.
Yeah.
I suppose the best way to adjust this character or to buff him would be to, make him have an easier time dealing with Flywheel, but everything else is like difficult to touch.
Yeah, you can't really buff or nerf him. He's like another variant of Priestess where you can't really touch the character without just completely either breaking or breaking or killing them. Like he's stuck in that limbo state. He's either a god or he's trash. Like there's no in between. So it's really hard to do anything to him without just completely destroying him, whether it be in a good way or a bad way. That's all for the B+ tier. We are now going to be moving down to the B- tier. We are now in the final echelon of the hunters. Since we broke the bottom 10, we are now at the bottom 8 of hunters. These are practically the hunters that are complete dog shit for the most part, unless you are like, I don't know, like a person that can use 200% brain power in like a match and have like a spare hand to move around or something along those lines. Just these hunters are just very hard to even draw with. Everything in B- and below.
Okay, we're gonna start off with perhaps a relatively controversial one, that being Clerk. I believe a good number of people, especially here in the NAU server, still think that Clerk is very good. However, after listening to the discussions of many top CN players and talking with some of the other players who used to play Clerk, myself in the NAU server, I have come to the conclusion that yes, Clerk is just as bad. Clerk's entire or rather, more than 60% of her strength can be found on the map control department. But the map control is like different from other characters, where for other characters, like let's say Wu Chang, you map pressure by physically being there, but Clerk blocks off the cipher from a distance, albeit from like wherever in the map. Usually as Clerk, you're gonna bring Blink or like Trump card plus detention. Her major strengths are that, as is previously hinted at, she can unconditionally block off individual ciphers throughout the map at any distance. As long as the Clerk player is patient, there usually is like very little counterplay to dealing with the recording, unless you like Dakota Cipher or Dakota Gate with two people being there, right? If the survivor's skill relies on using pallets or windows, then Clerk can have a relatively easier time dealing with them. Clerk's pursuit is indeed one of her greatest weaknesses, but her pursuit relies on A, her relatively good movement stats, and 2, not the blocking off windows or pallets with her recordings, but actually by decreasing the survivors' vaulting speed by 20% when they vault. That is actually a relatively underlooked factor. Now, also, Clerk has a good potential to just turn the table during the cipher priming phase and like detention phase, because she can actually like actively pop the last cipher, and then use detention to kill the person in front of them, or just straight up block off a gate and stop it from being opened. It's almost impossible to just open a gate alone against the Clerk. Now, despite all of those strengths, they do not at all cover up her weaknesses. Clerk is probably the single most vulnerable hunter against support. Any form of support, whether it's like close range support, like barmaid and female dancer, or like close range stun support like batter, antiquarian forward. Clerk really struggles to deal with them. Even something as simple as body block that can seriously mess up Clerk's game plan. As someone who is map pressure focused, she walks on bare feet, which means that she also can't really do anything against marathoning. Now, if you look at how the record pages work, previously, the way how they work is that when Clerk is using them, they don't recharge. Previously, with Clerk being dominating as she was back in TOA 6, this was necessary, but at the moment, this really hinders her performance. And overall, the room for error when playing Clerk is just rendered really, really small, which, of course, makes her pretty weak in this meta.
Yeah, that just sums it up. She herself didn't really even receive that many changes. It's just a fall to the test of times and people just figuring out. She just got like it's just the Dream Witch effect, you know? People just
Yeah.
figured out what to do against her, and that's really all that happened. Nothing else.
Yeah, back in the Coasex meta, if we all remember, she's basically in the same boat of strength as Hermit, and look at now where Hermit is. As the meta progresses, Clerk's weakness in terms of pursuit is really starting to show, and Warp doesn't really work on her, whereas Hermit gets the full benefit from Insolence and Warp, and has very consistent pursuit abilities, especially after tier 2, where it feels like Hermit has infinite charges.
Yep. Moving on from Clerk, we're going to be moving on to Mad Eyes. So, Mad Eyes, he's a chair guarding and map control hunter whose recommended traits blink and insolence in confined space. Now, I think we all know the base premise of Mad Eyes being he's like Wheel. You either know him or you don't. If you don't have Mad Eyes mastered, he is ass. Now, if you have Mad Eyes mastered, he can feel like one of the most oppressive things in this game. He has great chair pressure and great map pressure, being the fact that since there's consoles literally all over the map, if you're decoding a cipher from, let's say it's Ever Sleeping, and you're decoding a cipher at Dancing Geisha, if he is at Cabin, he can just select the console that's at Dancing Geisha and then force you off the cipher, unless you willingly want to take chip hits. Then, that's also the option. But if you do that, you feed him presents, and then, he starts going crazy. Not to mention, there are certain chairs that you practically cannot rescue against him. His camping is not bad. Like, if you do not get a rescue against the Mad Eyes, you will lose the game. Just point simple. If first rescue goes to shit, you lose the game. That's just it. There is no coming back unless the Mad Eyes just makes a mistake and decides to turn off his brain. However, even though while this is all nice and dandy, he is like most of the hunters down here in the B- tier and even in the B+ tier, he is weak against support. Any form of harassment forces him off of his console, whether it is the mobile console or it is the physical console on the map, which in turn messes up his map pressure or even his chase in general, because a lot of times Mad Eyes will just try to set up walls to then force the survivors to then walk back into them and entrap them and encage them. And against the harasser, you can't really do that because he'll just stun you. She will stun you out of it and then call it a day there. That person who you're chasing now gets to transition and they'll just keep doing it. They until they run out of item, they'll just keep doing it. And we have harassers, i.e. Prospector, that never run out of items, which means if you're a Prospector facing a Mad Eyes, you can quite literally go the entire game just chasing the fucking Mad Eyes and just throw magnets at him when he's on consoles trying to pressure ciphers or chasing someone, and he can't do shit about it. Even if he's trying to get on you, you throw a magnet at him, you push, and now he can't do shit about it. And yes, this does slow down the game a lot, but Mad Eyes is a slow burn character anyway. You want to take your time with him. You can't expect to cipher rush a Mad Eyes, because if you try that, then you're all just going to be dancing around the consoles, in which then he'll just chip you out eventually. Added on with the fact that he is the single-handed most difficult character in this game. Mad Eyes literally requires the most, conceptualized brain power and thought processes and just learning in general to even play the character somewhat efficient. Unless you're already a dedicated player that has been playing since practically release, if you are a new player, do not bother. Don't bother playing this character. I'm sorry, just don't. You're not going to feel any form of satisfaction playing this character unless you're going to spend the next 2 years learning him. If you're gonna, that time you spent learning Mad Eyes, you could put that into learning literally any other character that is better than him in this tier list, and you will feel much more satisfied with the results.
Yeah, we have a saying in the CN server where, for Mad Eyes, you're not gonna meet him in 10,000 matches, but if you meet a Mad Eyes, it's a Mad Eyes that has played 10,000 matches.
On some don't fear the man that knows 1,000 kicks, fear the man that has practiced the same kick 1,000 times type of shit.
Correct. Just shows how extreme this character is.
Yup. That is...
Okay. Next up, Smiley Face. Well, this is a very interesting one because I really missed the time back in Season 2, Season 3 where Smiley Face dominated by The mighty has fallen more than he should have fallen at this point. Probably one of the worst hunters. Not like unsavable, but still pretty bad. And I'm gonna explain why. Smiley Face is like also a jack of all trades character. And usually with Smiley Face, you actually don't bring detention. You bring Blink and then like Trump card and then Insolence. Maybe a few stacks of Destructiveness and like Inertia or something like that. Smiley Face is a character that you can kind of view as like a breaking wheel who has shifted his strength in map pressure onto chair guarding. That is perhaps the best analogy that I can draw. In terms of pursuit, as long as the terrain favors Smiley Face, and the Smiley Face player knows what they're doing and has good finesse and can like rotate and control the rocket dash pretty well, then most like close range tools don't really threaten Smiley Face, and that includes Flywheel. Compared to Breaking Wheel, Smiley Face has a much easier time dealing with Flywheel because it can easily be baited out and it's like not as easy to time, right? Distance scanning tools can also be ineffective because when you meet a Smiley Face at the start of the game, he's going to be on Propeller and dash around all the time. Also, one like overlooked strength on Smiley Face is like his modified drill, the one that increases healing speed by 100%. It is absolutely brutal. If you get Terror Shocked by a Smiley Face with a modified drill in front of a chair, whether it's like a regular hit with just in front of the chair or just the rocket dash, and you get Terror Shock, the consequence is even worse than that of Gamekeeper, because if you have a modified drill on you, you're not getting up for the next 2 minutes. If things go according to plan, Smiley Face is gonna have a blast. Everything's gonna go well, and just like Breaking Wheel, survivors are gonna struggle to get around and coordinate. Yeah, if it's not obvious, Smiley Face has pretty good chair guarding potential, and double downs are usually the way through which Smiley Face secure their wins. This is all nice and dandy, but reality goes the different way. Ultimately, when it comes to pursuit, Smiley Face relies on the terrain to be favorable. He's like very afraid of long pallets and long windows where he can't really get any mileage out of propellers. Speaking of propellers, it's not something to be taken for granted, as in it's something that will run out as the game progresses. I think Smiley Face players can relate to this very much. There are many instances where you like desperately need a propeller and you can't find any nearby. And you need propellers both for early game chase and for late game map pressure. Certain stun abilities, like Prospector's Magnet and other ones, can straight up shut down a propeller and rocket dashes. Even if only one propeller has been rendered useless, that can be absolutely devastating for the Smiley Face. Overall, the character kind of does a bit of everything, but isn't consistent enough in any of those.
Yeah, that sums it up. He's he is just a gamble. It's all or nothing practically with him again. This sucks to see where he was. I remember when he was just the number one, like one of the most used picks back in Koa 2, man, when I first started the game.
Yeah.
Back in the days where Ripper was the best hunter in the game, and we'll get to him in a bit.
Yes, we will.
Next up, we have Axe Boy coming in at bottom 5, taking up that number 5 spot. So, Axe Boy is a pursuit and chair guard hunter, with his recommended traits being blink peepers along with trump card detention or confined space detention. So trump detention if you're trying to push for a win, up down if you are just settling for, you know what, I'll just take my draw and be happy. Which, honestly, is what I think any hunter in B- should be doing. I'm gonna be so real. Hell, even in B+. His strength is that, in theory, he could get an insta-down if he's on your ass and then he pulls a flame, you get hit with said flame, and then he knocks you. That could, technically speaking, be a insta-down situation, on top of the fact that the fire pull animation doesn't have much problem. Like, it barely has any recoil, if not none at all, practically. It's kind of like, it's the Joseph swing of recovery from ability. He just moves his arm one way, and then he's back to swinging at you in, like, the next second. Like, it's pretty fast. On with the fact that he has good mobility across the map, being with his restful road ability and the corruption and the corrupted area out from the trees, which means that if you try to marathon him, you will get punished for it, because if you keep running into corrupted area, you will then get purple flame, which will then allow him to have free shots at you on top of the already existing flames that just spawn in from the trees. Corrupted area also slowing down the survivor helps him a lot, since he's just able to catch up easily without using the road. And if he uses the road while you're crossing corrupted area, just consider yourself taking a free hit and call it a day. And if you're half health, well then just your ass is grass and cry. Like, there's nothing you can do about it aside from cry about it. Now, even though he does have this insta down potential, he is still a relatively weak character, being that his literal gimmick being his trees, they can sometimes just spawn in inconvenient areas, which means that sometimes you'll have those instances where fireballs are just out of reach. Added on with the fact that in the early game, he doesn't have access to corrupted area, which means early game wise, you can marathon an Axe Boy, as long as you're paying attention to where your purple flame is. If you do that, then you can practically just marathon him like he is any other M1 hunter. As well, he gets fucked by Flywheel. Or just any survivors that have tools to negate fire damage, or just can keep up and make distance against him, since he only gets his road at tier 1. So if you keep him away from tier 1, he practically has no way to catch up to you aside from a fireball speed boost. But if he misses the fireball, then you're still kiting anyway, because you're still at full health and you still have your abilities to use when he catches up to you. He's just overall an inconsistent character that in the early game requires a lot of RNG and survivor mistake in order to actually be able to catch up, which in turn makes him a really weak character overall.
Yeah. One trend that you're going to realize with all of those B- tier, especially and below hunters, is that theoretically they can do well, but in reality that's not going to happen. Theoretically, but no.
Yeah. Moving on.
Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Ember.
Ember.
Okay, Ember. If we want to talk about Ember, then we kind of have to mention his recent buffs. Overall, Ember is still focused on chair guarding and map control. His pursuit is still pretty weak overall. And usually, to compensate for that, you're going to bring Blink and then Insolence and Detention. First chase goes pretty well. Then his chair guarding is not something to be scoffed at. It's still pretty good. Previously, the Infernal Soul, the Fire Rage thing, it doesn't automatically increase, but after his recent buff, it actually does increase. I think it's 0.2% every second. That's still something, right? There are going to be fewer instances where you just have almost enough, but not enough for one Infernal Soul, so you can't use that Phantom thing to chair guard. Now, there are fewer instances of that, and it's still, it's something, right? After his buffs, he can quickly gain Rage once the game begins. Pretty much when you see the first survivor, you're already going to have 1 stack of Rage. And then, yeah, chair guarding with Phantom, it has very long force swing. It's 4.5 seconds, but it still applies pretty good pressure. When the Ember has Blink in hand, there's pretty good turn the table potential during late game. You can still try your best to push for the win with puppets at each gate, or leaving the Phantom to interrupt progress at one gate or whatnot. Yeah, overall those are his strengths, but again they do not cover up his obvious weaknesses. One being something that I previously mentioned, which is that his chase is still not good enough. Any types of support can screw up his pursuit, and he can't deal with double rescues, as good as his chair guarding sounds. He's ultimately the same with Clerk and Mad Eyes, where their own pursuit simply is not good enough and they rely on Blank. But if the survivor constantly creates distance or has good enough tools to deal with that, then the room for error for Ember, as well as the other 2 characters I previously mentioned, is still going to be pretty low.
Nope. There's really nothing else to say. Just bad chase, just relying on camp, and even then, if he can't get it down, his camp is pointless.
True.
Moving on now to the C tier. These hunters are just absolute dog shit. You're just you play them. I respect you because you have confidence, but confidence is sadly not gonna win you the match. Depressingly
Hey,
so.
of course, no one's gonna stop you from playing them for fun, but if you happen to lose a match and you feel like you did your best, don't complain that this game is survivor-sided.
Practically, yeah. Just take a look at the character you're playing and remind yourself, I'm playing a character that sucks complete ass. Just keep that in your head, you know?
Okay, so starting off C tier, we have Nightmare. Perhaps I want to talk about this?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Nightmare is a map control hunter. And usually with Nightmare, you bring either Blink or Warp, and then a combination of trump card detention with maybe 3 stacks of pallet breaking, or 2 stacks of pallet breaking with 1 stack of Berserk. Either that or you can bring Insolence detention. I personally don't like it, but there actually is some valid use out of Insolence if you want to deal with Marathon a bit better during your first chase. Since Nightmare is a map control hunter, we can expect, most of his strength to come from the map control itself, and that is true. Ravens have excellent information gathering ability. It combines both information gathering and decreasing vaulting and decoding speed and gaining information and just a place for Nightmare to teleport using the Raven teleport, which is called Bad Omen, at the same time. It's designed very well in my opinion. With the supporting trait Teleport, or Warp sometimes even, Nightmare's late game pressure is pretty strong, and can create openings during the detention phase. Especially when a single survivor on the team is being eliminated, or a single survivor does not know what they're doing, Nightmare is a force to be reckoned with. Again, during the detention phase, if previously Nightmare has sufficiently consumed the resources on the survivor's end, then Bad Omen plus the supporting trait Teleport can definitely turn the game around. That being said, no matter how good you are at map control, you can't allow your pursuit abilities to be too bad. Otherwise, there's no point in applying map control because you can't kill survivors in the first place. Nightmare's pursuit is garbage before tier 2 presence, as unwilling as I am to admit that. Even after tier 2, his chase ability is just barely acceptable. Almost every survivor tool, whether it's something that gains distance or stuns or is protective, can deal with Nightmare. And yeah, basically, as any survivor, if you're not kiting a Nightmare, and you're not dying to Warp or Blink within 70-80 seconds, then you should really reflect on yourself, whether you've done a successful kite, whether your transition was correct, or whether you just panicked. Because that really is not supposed to happen with tier 1 Nightmare. That being said, if that does happen, then Nightmare can definitely begin his entire map control and then Cypher guarding game. Ultimately, the Bad Omen Raven teleport ignores distance, so if Nightmare is in a good position with a 3-man endgame, 1 Cypher remaining, then every Cypher to him will be a leftover Cypher that is guardable, similar to Wu Chang. The recent buff did somehow address his early game chase, the most effective one being, of course, the 0.2 seconds decrease on the pallet breaking speed, and also the additional 3% speed boost when he's not chasing a survivor. That makes him deal with Marathon a bit better, and also dealing with close pallet mind gaming better. The whole revelation thing, don't expect it to be useful. You would be lucky to get any use out of it 1 every 10 games. Just, that's kind of silly.
Yeah. Shit. There's nothing much yeah, man. If you like the character,
I guess he's not complete garbage because again, in a rank environment, there are people who don't know what they're doing. That's number 1, and 2, he's ultimately a map pressure character, right? So without sufficient communication, he's gonna do probably a bit better than people expect him to. That's the best I can say about this character.
Yeah. Now, Violinist. Oh, buddy. Man, this hurts me. So, Violinist, the pursuit and chair guarding guy, Hunter, you know, the person, the man with the music. The recommended persona being Blink, Warp, and Peekers, with his strengths being the fact that just like Axeboy, he could theoretically get an insta down if he hits you with a note and then hits you right after. On top of the fact that his camp is actually pretty solid to an extent, with the issue that even if he hits you with the note, you can still rescue because his animation is just too long. It's like a feaster tentacle in a sense. You know how feasters hits you with a tentacle, you can still rescue anyway because of the animation. It's just like that with Vio. He hits you with a note. If you're right on top of the chair, you can still get the rescue anyway. You'll probably get double down, but hey, at least you got the damn rescue. Not to mention, he has at least the ability to actually debuff the survivors with his what is it, the Rhapsody, which is just him chucking the notes at people. So, you know, it decreases decoding, it decreases gate opening speed, it decreases movement speed. Like, so it's not a bad ability. And then at that, his infinite movement can also cause survivors to just not transition at all because they have to stand in between lines. Otherwise, they will end up taking a free hit. And at that, it has area of effect. So, you know, it can hit multiple people at once, which can also still be pretty good for camping. However, the character is quite literally what we call a coin flip. If the game goes good for him, then it's good for him. If the game doesn't go good for him, then he sucks complete ass. I say this as the guy who got S1 for him and have held top 5 for multiple occasions, and I was a Hunter main. He can't do shit aside from debuff because he has no way of actually gaining mobility on a survivor aside from debuffing them, but he even has to hit the debuff for that. He has horrible base stats. That pallet breaking speed is god awful. I've been traumatized by it to a point where it's like, holy shit. And against any survivor that has any form of gaining distance, he just can't afford to gamble. If any modern day survivor goes against a violinist, being something like a cheerleader, a fire investigator, he just can't catch up to them. He just can't, which means if he can't catch up, he'll never get his ability, which means he'll never be able to get a chair, which means he can't do the only thing that he's even remotely decent at.
Like, yeah, there's a good reason why we call Violinist a gambler, because it's not even like completely about your own skill or what the survivor's doing. It's just gambling. And compared to Axeboy, at least Axeboy gains a speed boost after a fire pull, right? Antonio gets none of that. And then, in terms of chair guarding, Axeboy has like much less backswing, whereas for Violinist, you can at least get the rescue. It's just, oh, so sad.
It's so sad, bro. I remember when Vile was so good when he released, but that was just because people didn't know how to kite him. And that was it. And moving on to our final character, the absolute worst dog shit character in IdentityV, Jack the Ripper.
You want to talk about it, or
we could just alternate. I guess I'll just start it off. So we have Ripper, who is a pursuit and chair guarding, I say with quotation marks being posted up as I'm recording this. Hunter, whose recommended persona traits are Blink, Trump Card with Warp. His strengths is just he moves fast and he has a fog blade. And the fact that he's invisible, you know, makes it hard to actually, you know, somewhat tight kite him and just kite him in general, because obviously it's hard to kite the thing that you can't fucking see. And in theory, he could get an insta down if he lands a foggy while he's on your ass and then immediately hits you. In theory. And he can also, in theory, double down if he hits the rescuer with a foggy and then hits them. But like Violinist, he has too much recoil on that damn fog blade. So if he hits you with the fog blade, just rescue. You'll get double down. But hey, again, at least you got the rescue. But, you know, I guess a double down is something for a character that quite literally has nothing else to do with his fucking life.
Okay. Now, I guess we've been through Ripper's strengths. Time to talk about why he's the absolute worst of the worst. Where do I even start, man? This is... Okay. The only thing that the Ripper has to worry about is the Foggy Blade, something that has a massive 20-second cooldown and absolutely zero room for error. If, as a Ripper, you miss 2 Foggy Blades in the game, you can say goodbye to the win. Before tier 1, Ripper walks purely on barefoot, like as nothing else. Just purely walks on barefoot, and like Nightmare can be countered by pretty much everything. Even after tier 1, where he supposedly has okay chase, certain like stun abilities as well as like long pallets and windows are still going to force him to like volt or get stunned and thus get out of invisibility state. In terms of Foggy Blade, the difficulty of it is kind of a bit harder than, let's say, Hermit's Electric Shot, because both kind of have the same width, but Hermit's Electric Shot travels a bit faster. Many other like hunters are either afraid of Flywheel or Broken Windows, but Ripper is afraid of both, which is really funny, because Flywheel can be used to like straight up cancel the Foggy Blade. It's reactable, of course, and Broken Windows can be used to like gain easy distance against Ripper, especially during the early game. Currently, the most common reason why Ripper loses a match is because he straight up gets kited for like 4 ciphers at the start of the game. That's the most common reason. The Foggy Blade is way too long, has 20 seconds, and in many situations you either like have it in your hand with no place to use it, or you use it and you like end up being devastated because it misses. It's a full 20-second cooldown, man. This character is like, I think to fix this character you kind of need like a mini redesign. This doesn't really work. Even with like supposedly warp and then influence Ripper, you're gonna struggle with other things. You still can't deal with harassment, for example. You still can't deal with the fact that you maybe need warp to get your first hit in the first place, and by the time warp is ready, Flywheel's also ready, and your first Foggy Blade is still going to be rendered useless, and you maybe chair someone 90 or 100 seconds into the game. If Ripper does, however, manage to get a relatively fast down, losing is not going to be particularly difficult. That's only in theory, as is previously mentioned. If, as a survivor, you get, like, foggy hit and then hit again 5 seconds later and then you die, then you should really slap yourself in the face and ask yourself what you're doing.
Yeah. Enough said about Ripper. He just sucks, man. Like, I remember the days, best hunter in the game, Koa 2, he was him, and he just sucks now. Like, if you are a Ripper player, my heart goes out to you. I know it must be painful barely getting a 1 kill every match, maybe a draw. I know it must be hard, but just know, eventually your Ripper buff will come. He will become a B tier hunter eventually. But right now is not the time. And with all that, I believe that is every single hunter explained with their position and whatnot, along with bonuses of just having funsy conversation. This video's fucking long, but I hope you all enjoy it. And if you watch to the end,
consider liking and subscribing.
Yeah, if you watch to the end, type in the comment section W Yalda for sitting here for damn near 2.5 hours with me.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. Also, as a final disclaimer, if you have your own opinion and you think each character should be positioned differently within 1 tier or should go like half a tier higher and half a tier lower, that's totally fine. We all have opinions. However, if you think that Goatman is a C tier character, then I'm gonna have a problem with you.
Yeah, practically. We can have debates on some things, but certain things are just, they're just non-negotiables. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you don't really agree with this tier list, then consider if the conditions, or rather the methodology of this tier list really applies to how you assess the game or where you are in the game right now.
Yeah. Because remember, obviously, the game is based on highest of caliber gameplay, along with the fact that it's a rank setting. So what is normal in a high tier rank setting, not just in a general rank setting. That's why a lot of the times when I make tier lists, I just say, sorry, low tiers. We don't really care about you when it comes to balancing, because you guys struggle with shit like Naiad, So we don't really use you guys for balancing things, or just even like determining the strengths of a character. But like that's just it. But regardless, that is it for the video. Remember, if you liked, like and subscribe. You know, if not for me, do it for Yalda. You know, he already said you should do it. I'm not. I'm just repeating what the messenger said. You know, I'm trying to hit 10,000 subs before the end of the year, so greatly appreciated. And once again, big thank you to Yalda for being able to translate all of this from me, because this did all come directly from Billy. So huge thank you to Yalda, like, for being able to do this for us. So we can at least know why, because I know when I saw this, I saw Feaster in A tier, and I was like, what the fuck? I lost my goddamn mind. But Yalda, if you have any closing statements you want to make?
No, yeah. Well, peace out, I suppose.
Yep. Bye everyone. Thank you all for watching. Love you all.